This is Good Noticing.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Do you have any recommendations?
I do. My favorite boys from Argentina have put out yet another album. These kids are prolific. Paco Amoroso and Catriel. I, like many millions of people, found them through their NPR Tiny Desk concert a year or two ago. And they put out an EP since then. And then they just came out with a full-length album called Free Spirits. I love it. I love them so much. They have the cutest little butts.
They're your cat's eye.
They're my cat's eye. I nephew them so much. And this album, first of all, I mean, all of it is really fun. The features are incredible. The features are Anderson .Paak, Fred Again, and Sting. When I heard Sting on the album, I said, hold on, is this? It's crazy. What a crazy choice. It's so fun. And then the song with Anderson .Paak is called I, and that's my top recommendation of the album.
A wreck within a wreck.
A wreck within a wreck. Okay. Double espressos.
That's just 2 espressos in a cup.
2 espressos in a cup. It's like you take 1 espresso and you double it. I really recommend that amount. It's such a like delicate amount of coffee, but I think a single espresso, it's like but a sip. I feel like it goes by too quickly. By the time you're like in the swing of it, it's drained. But a double espresso is a really beautiful amount that it
feels very American to go and be like, I love what you guys are doing here. Have you ever thought about more?
Exactly. I got double espresso pods from my Nespresso machine, and I've been like sipping my double espresso and reading the news.
That sounds like a recipe for an actual heart attack.
I'll tell you what, I'm not happy, but the espresso feels nice. And then the Birkenstock Naples shoe. I'm not wearing it right now, but I feel like—
Is that the shoe you always wear?
Yeah. I wanted to recommend it because people have been asking me about it because I feel like our eyes are accustomed to a Birkenstock Boston clog. And I do think a clog is like a necessary element of a shoe collection. I think that to have a clog so you can just like pop outside really quick in New York City, especially running to the bodega, I think a closed toe open backed shoe is crucial.
I've never had those, so.
Really?
You've never helped me in my life, yeah.
Well, that's why I'm recommending it now.
But you're not, right? Aren't you recommending something else?
It's just a different style of a closed toe open back shoe. I just think it's fun to have one that isn't like the classic Boston Birkenstock. It's like a little bit of a variation on the genre, but still a perfect bodega shoe.
My mind is blown. I thought you were wearing loafers, fuzzy loafers this whole time.
They're not even fuzzy. Claire, do you have any recommendations?
Yes, I do. Okay. Recommendation number 1, Mexico City. Have you been? It turns out 1 million people from Brooklyn, they can't all be wrong.
I'll tell you what, when you're walking around Mexico City, you can really see a Brooklynite also check in.
I saw a TikTok that was like, yeah, Condessa's great if you like Brooklyn and you like Mexico. I am like, yeah, I do like Brooklyn and I do like Mexico. And I guess actually specifically every time I go to a city, I'm kind of like, well, what's the Brooklyn of this city? Because that is what I like.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to the Upper East Side of Manhattan or of any city. I don't want to go to your fanciest Fifth Avenue and see all of the fancy stores that are in every metropolitan in the world. And I also don't, I'm not going to the dangerous parts of New York really that often. That's not really, I kind of want to go to the middle where there's a cute cafe and interesting artisans. And that's just who I am. And I think it's okay to be like, yeah, I want to go to the Brooklyn of every city.
I want to go exactly where in each city people are being innovative with focaccia.
Yeah. Yeah, or whatever the carb is of your choice. It could be like a rice thing. It could be like a flatbread, whatever. But I do want to go and say, like, who here graduated from design school and is now like reclaiming their culture? I want to see that shop.
Exactly.
If that makes me a bad person, if that makes me boring, but I do. I always, whenever I travel somewhere, I always Google, and where is the Brooklyn of this place? And let me tell you, Reddit knows.
Exactly.
My 2 specific recs are Ashley and I went to a taco place that made us both cry.
Oh, wreck within a wreck.
Yeah. Well, I have 2 Mexico City specific recs and then a general rec. It was called Taco Tokyo, but with a C. So don't let that throw you off. Don't spell it. Oh, no. Taco Tokyo with an I.
Yeah.
Tokio.
Mm-hmm.
We had a ribeye taco.
It was fucked up. It like really was one of those things where you take a bite of it and you go, well,
damn.
How'd you do that?
Did you ever read that article about how like Doritos has like broken time and space by figuring out a way to get like maximum fat to your brain to release extra dopamine?
No.
Okay.
But I knew they were doing that because I've taken a bite of a Dorito.
And you've felt better than you've felt otherwise. I really feel like whatever, like the fat to salt ratio of this taco was, it really like put me into a place of nirvana. And then my second rec is, this is kind of a self-plug, but I don't know how else to describe it. On my Instagram, I did like a roundup of places we went, and one of the Instagram photos in the carousel has a map of like a bunch of galleries in a neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to look for like the Brooklyn galleries in Mexico, which I feel like you know what I mean. That is a specific thing. Every neighborhood has like where the young people are, the young people who are wearing interesting pants these days, and that you want to see their art. And if you don't, then don't look at my Instagram. But if that
maybe you want to see their pants.
Yeah, but if you are interested in being like, oh, what are people between 20 and 35 where they show in their art? This is a good little walk around area. It's like 10 blocks total, and you get to see 6 galleries. And I feel like that's actually a good walking tour.
Mm-hmm.
And then recommendation number 3, man, just pushing yourself to say yes as much as possible. I just said this last week. I feel like we were all over. We were in LA on Sunday. Monday morning, we did a podcast in Burbank, and then we flew to Mexico City. And then Wednesday, we did our whole travel itinerary, and like obviously there were setbacks. Wednesday, we did a red eye back to New York so that we could do an all-day event Thursday and then do a podcast. And then I went out to dinner. And then we had a friend that we've been meaning to like meet up and get drinks with be like, oh, do you want to meet up this weekend? And there was almost a part of me that was like, I bet I'll be really tired on Saturday. But you kind of have to just say yes to those. If there's anybody you want to get drinks with and become friends with, you have to say yes the first time, no matter how tired you are. And you know what? I went and I was fine. It's not actually that hard to sit and have a beer and chat.
No, we had a great time.
We had a great time.
And she so generously chose a place that was really convenient for both of us.
Yeah, that was awesome. But my point is, I feel like if I had looked at this, I would have said, this is really going to wear me out. And I just kept saying yes. And it all worked out fine.
Yeah, I think that there is a hard balance to strike between, you and I have been historically critical of self-care means never leaving your house.
Yes. And I actually saw really upsetting TikToks that I would like to take a minute and talk about when you're done.
Okay. There's a balance you have to strike between wearing yourself
ragged,
wearing yourself down, and wearing yourself gone. I think that it's good. It's good to actually live a life that kind of makes you a little tired because there's a lot happening.
Yeah, go to bed pooped. It'll help you sleep.
It really does.
I saw a trend of TikToks that it was funny. I got first served one and it had like 1 million views, but then a lot of the comments were like, you copied this from another girl. And I was like, another girl's doing this? And the TikTok genre was a night in my life as a woman who has no friends.
Oh, no.
But it was like a positive pitch. And the night was, she lived in New York City. The night was coming home, taking a shower, having Diet Coke in a wine glass, watching TV, and heating up pizza. And then I watched the original video, and sure enough, it was like the exact same thing, but not in New York. And the New York woman had bought in pizza, but this woman had like heated up oven pizza.
How did both people think of pizza unless one was copying the other one?
Well, here's the thing. A lot of people in the comments were like, this is the dream night. I also have no friends and no boyfriend. I wish I could have this life. And I feel the thing that really made me sad about it, because I understand not everybody is an extrovert. Some people get social interaction, just, they have their parents and a sibling maybe, and then they have coworkers, and that's good enough. And they need a lot of time to recharge. I think the thing that made me so sad is I'm like, what do you mean you have nothing in your life but work and TV? Like, what do you mean you have no friends, no romantic partner, and all you can think to do with your free time, which is a lot, is watch TV and heat up pizza? Like, cook yourself a meal. Go outside. Have a passion. Garden.
The problem is doing things takes effort. It does make you tired. The avoidance of it is so stressful. I read this article in the Atlantic that I didn't submit for topic discussion today, but I did find it really interesting because it was about customized AI friendship bots, like creating your own AI friend instead of just having ChatGPT and having it get to know you, like Friend AI, which I think is a version of this, but it's not quite it. Like, all of these companies are working on upgrades that let you long-term customize like who the chatbot that chats back to you will be. And it's about this study into like frictionless intimacy.
I'm not even talking about intimacy though. I'm talking about
No, but I think it's all connected because I think
like
intimacy
buying ingredients
can't be frictionless, and also like being fulfilled isn't frictionless. Like, all of these things, we haven't like a version of society right now where like anything that you think you want, you can just like obtain in its most hollowed out form, like a pizza night or whatever, but like you're not experiencing anything if you don't like buy ingredients and cook something. You know what I mean?
Like, I feel like I will meet her at Not Everybody Needs Friends. I'm happy for her to live a life of solitude. The idea that within that solitude you have no personal interests is crazy to me. Like, and the idea that like all you do is go to your job, I feel like it's so severance. It's like you've severanced yourself. The only time I'm truly interacting with the world in a meaningful way is when I go to work.
Yeah.
It's crazy to me.
I guess I disagree with the not everybody needs friends thing, because obviously this person is like seeking connection, and that's why she's putting her friendlessness on the internet.
Yeah. But I guess like my first problem wouldn't be like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
She's new to the internet. I'm like, what do you mean in the last 25 years you never found a loom or something? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I was watching this guy. He's spent the last 25 years doing a model of New York City.
Oh, that's cool. I'd like to see that.
And it's actually at the City of New York Museum right now. You could. And I go, well, there's something.
Yeah.
She could have been like
modeling a city.
One borough into making New York City. Yeah.
And I wish she had.
Yeah, I think it would have brought her some friends, actually.
Anyway, should we get into personal space issues?
Chappell. Something funny that keeps happening is like, we already had a Chappell take last week on the Patreon, right? You came up with your, do you want to say what your take on Chappell Roan was last week?
Yeah, so following her kerfuffle with Paris paparazzi, where she, was very unaccepting of their presence, and people said, how dare she be mean to these paparazzi? You're at Paris Fashion Week.
And there was also some disagreement about if they were even paparazzi or if they were like autograph hounds. Apparently a real problem in Paris is that people will pose as fans, get your autograph just to flip them on eBay. So it's like they're insatiable because you can always flip another autograph.
Yeah.
And I get that there's something where it's like that feels even more pathetic. Like there's something.
And I think autograph hounds specifically, I think to be like, get the fuck away from me. Like it's not even being nice and respectful to your fans. It's being nice and respectful of people who hope to profit off of your fans. Like these are people who are taking advantage of your fans. Like,
yeah. And I also have seen Rosalia be like, please. Like it seems that in the way that the London tabloids were especially vicious for a while, it seems that paparazzi and autograph hounds in Paris have gotten out of control.
Yeah. But that being said, because of Chappell Roan's reputation as someone who is quite, short with photographers and fans alike, she's come out publicly to say, I'm allowed to have personal space when I'm out in public. When she's upset at people, everyone goes, oh, Chappell Roan, why did you get famous if you don't want to be photographed? Why are you at Paris Fashion Week if you don't want to be Paris Fashion Week? Like, how dare you? You're such an ungrateful bitch. If you don't like your fans, like, you need to stop being such an asshole. And that is my problem, is when people say you need to stop being this way. Actually, as fans, you need to stop having an expectation that she becomes something different. I think that she is very clear in who she is, what she's like, what her personality is, what she expects from the public, etc. If you don't agree with that, you can disengage. This isn't new behavior from her. It's like from the week she blew up, she's been someone who, yells at VIP in her audience. Like this is her vibe, is she has attitude. And when her attitude is flipped on the fans, suddenly it's unacceptable. But that's just her thing. And if you don't like it, that's fine. You don't have to accept it. But to say that she needs to be different for you is preposterous.
So what happened this week? That was Ashley's take last week.
Yeah. Now
since then, there's been another big thing.
So she is performing at a music festival, I think Lollapalooza in Brazil, and a 11-year-old who happens to be the child of Jude Law and a model named...
Not a model, she's a singer.
Oh, she's a lady. Kat Cavelli.
Who I have to say, I've suffered through a lot of celebrity nonsense in my 10 years of podcasting and 33 years of being alive. One of the most tedious, unwatchable videos I've ever come across was her 3-minute Instagram reel explaining what happened. It was actually torture for me.
So she and her daughter were at a hotel in Brazil. They were going to this music festival. She's also currently married to a Premier League player who has 5 million followers on Instagram. They were at this hotel having breakfast. The daughter spotted Chappell Roan, wanted to see if it really was Chappell Roan, left the table, did a walk by, came back to the table and said, yeah, that was Chappell Roan. How cool. Chappell Roan's security guard then comes over to the table and berates this girl for invading Chappell Roan's personal space.
I get why this man, I think his name is Jorginho, is how it's pronounced, and this woman are together. They are both the most long-winded over talkers who feel deeply entitled to having everything go their way because they're celebrities. And I'm happy they found each other. I went through a very upsetting situation with my family earlier today. First of all, no, he didn't. He wasn't there. My wife, Kat Cavelli, tagged. Because you got to stay tagging and I respect it.
Of course.
Is in Sao Paulo for Lollapalooza, Brazil. This morning, my daughter woke up incredibly excited. She even made a sign because she was so happy to see an artist that she really admires or used to admire at Chappell Roan. By coincidence, they're staying at the same hotel as this artist. During breakfast, the artist walked past their table. My daughter, like any child, recognized her, got excited, and just wanted to make sure it was really her. And the worst part is she didn't even approach her. She simply walked past the singer's table, looked to confirm it was her, smiled, and went back to sit with her mom. She didn't say anything, didn't ask her anything. What happened next was completely disproportionate. A large security guard came over to their table while they were still having breakfast and began speaking in an extremely aggressive manner to both my wife and my daughter, saying that she shouldn't allow my daughter to disrespect or harass other people. Honestly, I don't know at what point simply walking past the table and looking to see if someone is there can be considered harassment. He even said he would file a complaint against them with the hotel while my 11-year-old daughter was sitting there in tears. My daughter was extremely shaken and cried a lot. I've lived it with football, public exposure, and well-known people for many years, and I understand very well what respect and boundaries are. What happened there was not that. It was just a child admiring someone. It's sad to see this kind of treatment coming from those who should understand the importance of fans. At the end of the day, they are the ones who build all of this. I sincerely hope this serves as a moment of reflection. No one should have to go through this, especially not a child. Chappell Roan without your fans, you would be nothing. And to the fans, she does not even deserve your affection. And then I like that he included screenshots of Chappell Roan's Instagram in case you needed a visual because you had no idea, and a screenshot of the sign that his daughter made. So lots of proof.
I do want to say one thing.
That a lot of work went into this.
Post?
Yeah.
Okay, because not a lot of work went into that kid's sign.
HOTT. Well, she's 11. Actually, at HOTTOGO, I am watching Chappell Roan.
That's pretty good. Okay. Okay. The internet went haywire. People got really upset with Chappell Roan for her aggressive treatment towards a child. This is pretty out of line. And so then Chappell Roan went online and said, I don't know what happened. This is not my permanent security team. Like, this is not someone who works for me in a broader sense. I think it was someone who was assigned to her in Brazil. And I didn't even know anyone came up to my table. I don't hate children. I'm sorry to that mother and child. You don't deserve what happened to you.
She doesn't hate her fans.
She doesn't hate her fans. She doesn't hate kids. And the thing is, I don't really think she owed more than that.
Of course not.
And I've seen people saying, well, she should be aware of who she's hiring. I don't know, man. How much work do you expect someone to put in to like temporary security everywhere they go? It's a lot to say Chappell Roan herself needs to be extensively screening every single person that works for her for 2 days. It's a lot to say that like she owes that kid something extraordinary because like it sucks that kid got yelled at. But I do think that every time there's like a made up issue that Chappell Roan is like thrust to the center of, she has to go above and beyond to fix it. Like that only invites a world where people are creating more and more bombastic situations. Like if she doesn't have awareness of the situation, she can only apologize but so much. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I guess I feel like any response happening right now from people will be forgotten tomorrow. I do think like clearly she does have a feeling about being perceived in public. Like I have seen video, you know what I mean? Like we've seen the videos of her yelling at people. We've seen the videos of her turning her security on people. We've like, I just saw a video today of somebody taking a video of her in the airport, which obviously like isn't great. I understand the idea that you don't always want to be videoed all the time, but like she catches them and immediately turns their security guard and the guard like approaches them. I do believe that the security guard was given the instructions that Chappell likes to be left alone more than the average celebrity. I do believe this is coming from the top.
Right.
This is what she wants. And I do think she needs to be staying like at Airbnbs. I don't know. Like I do think she really wants privacy and I think she deserves privacy, but I do think there are certain places where like if you want to be alone, I guess you shouldn't be in a public hotel. That being said, I also do believe that like men who are given power of security, of course you'd be an asshole. Like men get drunk on power all the time. And when they are given like a modicum of permission to be aggressive and violent, they take it to the extreme. There was no reason to approach a child that already left the scene.
Right.
There's no reason to yell at a mom for something that like came and went.
I agree.
You know what I
with
mean?
that.
But I do think he took the direction, which I don't even think probably came from Chappell, but came from her team of like, she does not like to be bothered at all. All answers are no. And he like took it to the extreme. And I don't think she necessarily even owes that girl an apology. She didn't do anything wrong. She just sat there and ate breakfast and probably didn't even know anything happened. But I do feel that she needs to start living a life. Like, you know what I mean? Like Taylor Swift, did anybody see her during the tour? No, because she was always like in a big Airbnb.
Well, she was jetting home every night.
No, but she was also like in Airbnb. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I do think that, unfortunately, Chappell's privacy is more difficult because she's very famous. And now she has to like put extra money into being alone.
Yeah, and I think it is hard. I think now she is very successful. I think when she first blew up, she was a lot more famous than she was financially capable of this. And I think that now financially she's catching up and now she needs to change her behavior a little bit more.
And I do think, she has an agent.
Yeah.
It's not crazy to say like, okay, you need to negotiate all my deals to make sure that they pay for
somewhere
lodging.
Private. Yeah.
And you could say, I like Airbnb.
I think it's hard because I think she is a diva. Obviously, a kid should not get yelled at. I think that for this man to like let power go to his head in the way where he screamed at an 11-year-old is psychotic. But I think that also for her behavior, I am like, I don't know, man. Everyone wants less boring, less media trained content from celebrities. And then as soon as we get it, we say that person should be shot.
Mm-hmm. I do think if you're her fan at this point, you should know to leave her alone. I was watching this video of Maura Higgins interview Rob Pattinson. And the first thing she said, she goes, I'm a huge fan of yours. I love Twilight. I've seen it 100 times. And like thousands of comments were like, anybody who loves Robert Pattinson knows he hates Twilight. Never bring it up to him. And I am like, yeah, I guess that's how you know she's not a real fan. Like that's the joke is anybody at this point, I think approaching Chappell Roan probably doesn't like her that much.
Yeah.
I wouldn't. I'd be scared to look at her twice by accident. I actually saw celebrities this weekend. I'm trying to think of the last celebrity I approached and asked for a photo. But I was so starstruck I had to do it.
I really made you. I really wanted you to.
I put myself in a group chat with Mac and Ashley and I said, you guys, Vic and Christine from Love is Blind are in my coffee shop. And they were so beautiful and they were so shiny. But I have to say, like, I kept being like, don't look at them, Claire. They're allowed to sit there and eat their bagel by themselves. Don't look at them. But it's hard because I just wanted to keep, them more than anybody because they're so beautiful and lit from within. Lit by God.
I also think...
When you have God as a backlight all the time.
And an inner light as well.
Yeah.
Both lit from the back and from within in a way that is striking. I mean, the picture you sent, I almost went to the coffee shop to try to find them. And I said, Ashley, enough. But they did look so beautiful. But the point is, I think that not every celebrity hates being approached. Not every public figure is like extremely closed off in that way. Some people like being complimented on their work.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah, we do. Some people like it. So if you happen to see some people who are here right now, tell them that you like their podcast. But I think that, some people don't. And that is also within her right. Like, I don't know.
I guess my feeling is this. Anybody who likes Chappell Roan at this point, the message should be clear. She doesn't want you to fucking bug her. Chappell, if you want to stay out of the news, and I understand that right now she is an easy target for, she has, this narrative has been built both by her and around her. She has they're not clawing together nothing. Like it happens again and again. And like even that paparazzi thing in Paris, she took out her phone and started streaming, making it like from her, you know what I mean? That's very controlling the narrative and making it a public problem. If she does not want to be spoken about this way, she does need to take the precautions to like not be in situations like that. I know that sounds crazy, but it also is like, I guess you could say it's not the end of the world either that for 24 hours, the news cycle is about her and her security guard. Like those are the trade-offs.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what happens next because this is the end of her tour. I think the next round is going to be quite different.
What's something you could rip up a photo of right now that could get you banned from everything? I think she'd be really happy with the Sinead O'Connor type career where she's just singing for her dinner.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, 2 years ago, it could have been Israel. That's lost its power. What has power these days? What's sacred? Maybe a child. Maybe she could get on stage and rip up photos of children.
What if she and Timothée Chalamet cage match ballet dancers?
Chappell, call us. We'll keep spitballing some ideas for how to get you forever canceled to like really whittle it down to the true fans. Which, no offense, but Ashley and I saw you at where? Brooklyn
Steel. It was transcendent.
We saw you before you were anybody, so we always obviously get first dibs.
Yeah, you'd only sold out 2 nights at
These are statistically negligible amounts of people.
Exactly. Okay, should we talk about the airport?
Yeah.
So I don't know if anyone has been online and seen videos, or maybe you've been to the airport. Sorry, you might not be experiencing this through the internet. You might have been to the airport and seen that lines are out of control at TSA. A lot of airports are completely full from like the security line through the parking garage. It is like nothing I've ever seen in my life.
And what is causing that?
What's causing it is a government shutdown. And until the Democrats and the Republicans can come to an agreement on funding for the Department of Homeland Security, no one within the Department of Homeland Security is being funded except for ICE because
Why them?
through the big, beautiful bill that was passed over the summer, they received hundreds of $1 million worth of funding outside of the Department of Homeland Security. So they're receiving funding through multiple avenues. So within the Department of Homeland Security, funding is frozen, but they're also getting a separate stream. So yay. Yay. I'm glad ICE is getting paid and no one else is. So currently, TSA agents who are going to work are not being paid. They are going to get paid later if anything ever comes to fruition, if an agreement is ever made. But right now, the shutdown has been 43 days.
So these people have been working without a paycheck for
a while, and lots of them are calling in sick, just fully quitting. Their union is worthless, apparently. And so they are
That's
just
so
kind
interesting
of...
because I think flight attendants have an incredibly powerful union that came out of COVID. So maybe, I don't know. It's so hard. What am I rooting for, TSA? Sometimes this goddamn country puts you in between a rock and a hard place and you're like, who am I rooting for?
ICE or TSA? Jesus fucking Christ.
Like, obviously between them it's TSA, but...
More than 1/3 of TSA staff at airports in Houston, New York, and Atlanta have been absent or calling in sick in this
and those are major hubs.
In this now 5-week lapse in pay. Right now, the House and the Senate are not scheduled to return to business until the week of April 13th. And at that point, the shutdown will be at day 60.
Do these people not feel that they need to work?
So they are going in this week, and then they're supposed to have like Easter and Passover break.
I guess no.
Exactly. So
because how are you going to get home?
Exactly. So right now there's a situation where they're saying like, well, hopefully we come to an agreement this week so we get a vacation. And that's kind of the incentive on them right now, not to like help the American people or the TSA staff or like FEMA or any of the other agencies within the Department of Homeland Security that are being affected by the shutdown. Right now, their incentive is to come to an agreement so they can get their holiday.
I will say, Mac has been very frustrated with me recently because all I do is watch Veep. And he keeps saying you have to find a second show. And I say
nothing's more relevant.
But I'm like, I'm trying to understand the government. But nothing could prepare you for how selfish and fickle and like pathetic and just like your coworker down the cubicle these people fucking are to their core than Veep.
So the thing that is being kind of held up in deliberation right now is that while ICE and like Border Patrol have received $140 billion from the big, beautiful bill. So they're
billion
funded.
With a B?
Billion with a B. And I copy pasted this quote.
Thank you.
Because I don't trust myself to remember my M's and my B's.
M to the B. It's M to the B. It's always like that. I'm always taking the M's to the B's.
Exactly. But what the Democrats are fighting for is that they are saying we cannot move forward until you put some like roadblocks in the way of ICE.
And I've seen they're saying, quite reasonable. No,
they are quite reasonable.
Like that they have to like respect the normal rule of law.
Essentially, they're saying you can't go into someone's house without a warrant. There are a couple other things. One of them that they're trying to do, which I think they're a bit flexible on, is masking, they're trying to say ICE shouldn't be wearing masks.
Those Dems, you want masks on, masks off.
Pick a lane.
Oh, what? So when it prevents the spread of a virus, you want us to all wear a mask, but then when it allows anonymous murders allowed by the government, suddenly the mask is no good?
So the hard part that's happening right now is that what the Democrats are fighting for is rules for ICE, but it wouldn't affect ICE funding at all. The only funding that's being affected is TSA and all these agencies that are now shut down because the Democrats won't concede on any of these movements. And the Democrats keep on putting forth movements to separate the two things. They keep on saying, let's separate the ICE thing from the Department of Homeland Security thing so we can get TSA paid and we can get the Department of Homeland Security back on track. And then we'll talk about ICE later.
So the Republicans are holding flights hostage.
Yes.
Because they don't want to separate out the ICE thing.
So, and it's from both sides. So like,
yeah. But it feels that if like the disagreement is about ICE specifically, saying, okay, well, we'll talk about that later. Let's get people paid is like not holding it hostage.
They're essentially saying like, because for the Republicans to separate out ICE, then they're going to like have to concede on certain things. Like there is an agreement that's going to have to be made about ICE specifically. And they're saying we want to hold strong and make nothing about ICE specifically, like no new rules for ICE. So they're tying flights to it by saying like, if you don't agree to concede these things about ICE, then planes aren't taking off and that's the Democrats' fault. Whereas the Democrats can say, well, the Republicans won't separate ICE from the DHS negotiations. So the fact that airports are fucked is Republicans' fault. Like, they're both using TSA as like a bargaining chip.
But I guess I feel the Democrats are being a bit more reasonable.
Of course.
And the other thing is, and they're prepared to lose. That's the joke of the Republicans. I'm like, you'll just win them next time. Pay the TSA and then win. Listen, if you go head to head with Democrats, one thing I can promise you is you'll come out with less rules for ICE. These are not a hard people to break. Wear a diaper and show up to your like congressional hearings and just vote what you want. If anything, every member of Congress will go home with a personal ICE agent who gets to kill whoever walks on their... Like, I mean, just this idea, you don't need to hold flights hostage, buddy. We're a losing team. It's crazy.
So the other more conspiratorial, which aren't that conspiratorial when you look at how much of Project 2025 has moved forward, beliefs are that this is part of Trump's plan to privatize TSA and make it a part of his army, essentially. Like, this is in Project 2025 that they want to dismantle TSA and make it essentially a border checkpoint.
Not to be like an idiot, because isn't it a border checkpoint already?
Kind of.
So what you're saying is you want to like make it a
deportation zone, essentially. Like, right now, obviously, TSA is a checkpoint.
You have to have a passport. You like to come into this country from another country. That's the whole thing.
Yeah.
They're already like, that's like the whole, like they do check your shit and they ask your visas and they say, how long was your vacation?
Right. But
and then if they don't trust you, they like check you.
But you can fly with like other forms of documentation that they are currently deporting people because of. Like, if you have citizenship in progress or you have like an asylum case in progress.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But they're still checking those and then saying, like, those people are not flying against the law and TSA is like, oh, we don't follow the law.
Yeah.
It's just being like made violent and insane.
Yeah.
Like, airports are border checkpoints.
Right.
And it's like a lot of people have like middle statuses.
So they want to make it like a deportation checkpoint.
Yeah. They want to freak people out and say, like, even if you are here legally, but maybe not permanently.
Every time you fly, even domestically, you could get deported.
Yeah. Or even like, you know what I mean? You could be Australia coming for a vacation and get deported.
Mm-hmm. So now ICE has been deployed to several airports. I think 14 airports have ICE, quote unquote, helping TSA, even though they can't because they don't like there's nothing they can really do to help move these lines along. They're essentially there to just like cause more chaos. Like, they don't know how to use or read the machines that TSA
essentially
uses.
They're like, what if we scare everybody who's not white away from going to the airport with that helplines?
Yeah.
That's like what they're effectively doing,
I guess.
Because like, I mean, I've seen photos of them just standing with a gun behind the person checking your passport.
So at point of recording, today's the first day that they're there. We don't know what else will come of this. There has been other kind of horrors at airports. At LaGuardia last night, there was a plane and fire truck collision that killed a pilot and a co-pilot and injured 41 people. Currently, it's the fault of the air traffic controller. It's hard to say what other factors might have contributed to the situation. There was like a smell on a plane, so they deployed a fire truck to go check on this plane. That fire truck was coming through. The air traffic controller, I guess, just like wasn't paying attention. And a flight. And
well, it seems like he was there by himself. And
exactly.
Like Doge cut a lot of air traffic controllers, right?
Exactly. It's hard to say exactly whose fault it is, but I think that you could probably draw a really clear line back to Doge. I won't, but you probably could.
Ashley likes to give the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
Specifically to Elon Musk.
I like to let him Doge accountability.
Okay, well, good luck to all the flyers out there.
Yeah. I mean, hopefully they come to an agreement soon, but hopefully that agreement involves putting rules in for ICE and not the Democrats, once again, being bent over and spanked.
I guess we have to talk about the Taylor Frankie Paul situation.
Yeah, women with boundaries and women without boundaries.
And it turns out there's no way to win. So Taylor Frankie Paul, if you don't know, is the star of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives. She launched the show both with outing her swinging scandal, the soft swinging Mormon Wives mom talk.
So she's like a Utah-based woman with she's okay. She's a lady who lives in Utah. She had 3 children. And she gained prominence on social media for dancing with other Mormon wives in like the early COVID dancing on TikTok days.
She has a way of wearing sweatpants and sweatshirts that's better than what you wore on your wedding day. I really...
Yeah, but the problem is, I think when you look that good in sweatpants and sweatshirts, when you dress them up, you go, okay.
Get her back in sweat.
Why was she a 9 in sweats and like an 8.5 in a gown? Anyway, so she gained even more prominence when she came on TikTok one day and said, guess what? Me and a bunch of these other Mormon wives have been involved in like soft swinging. We have these parties and we all kiss each other's husbands.
And her situation broke up a marriage and her own marriage because like her and the guys she was making out with caught feelings, which is what happens at a house party when you're 22.
Yeah.
Which is why you should try to not have 3 kids before 22 because you haven't gotten all your making out of your system
You deserve
yet.
to kiss at a house party.
Yeah.
And it's hard when there's kids.
Without it getting custody involved. Anyways, I think her best friend, Miranda's husband, Chase, had feelings for her. It caused a ripple effect. A lot of divorces happened, and then she got online and said, here, I'll tell you why we got a divorce. We were soft swinging. Obviously, the internet went bonkers when they found out that these moms were all kissing.
Guess who else went bonkers? Hulu.com. Hulu said, that's a show.
So they started filming them, and from what I've heard, it was still like not 100% in the can and going to air when they finished filming these girls. They said, yeah, they've all got tons of hair. And yeah, they've all got identical filler. And yeah, they've got babies coming out of them. There are people who shit less frequently than these women have kids. But they said, is that a TV show? And then just when they had given up hope, a domestic violence call was brought to Taylor Frankie Paul's home. A neighbor called the cops when they heard them screaming.
So after Taylor's divorce, she had started dating a man named Dakota, and their relationship was volatile from the jump.
She eventually, because the police were called,
she was arrested.
She was arrested, and then she did plead guilty and was put on probation to domestic violence.
Mm-hmm. There was 3 charges. She ended up pleading guilty to the assault, and she had 3 years of probation. The other charges were going to be reevaluated at the end of her probationary period.
Since then, she went on to have a baby with that man named Ever. I don't think they stayed together through the pregnancy even. Maybe they did. I don't know. They've been very on and off since then. She also is just a fan favorite. She's the star of the show. The other women, they can do all they want. They can have as bad marriages as they want. They can get as much hair in his little body as they can. They just can't beat whatever she has in a sweatshirt. I can't explain it.
What she has in a sweatshirt has catapulted her from TikTok to her own reality show, or I guess a group reality show, but it was her show, to then they made her the Bachelorette.
And there is something, I do think it's really important to understand that there is something like weirdly compelling about her. If you've never watched the show, you know, the weird thing about Utah and Mormonism is like there's all these facades, and it's an interesting show to see the cracks of the facades, and it's a real microcosm of, I feel like, where feminism's at now, where like the fight between family and what do you do when all the women are doing really well and then all the men are losers, but you still kind of need one in your life. Mm-hmm. And something about it, amongst all these women, she has this weird, she's both super messy and weirdly grounded. Is that fair? When she's not in a cute crisis, she has this like deep empathy and calm to her. There's something very like,
it's so interesting because when she is in acute crisis, which is like more than most people, there is like such a lack of calm. Like it's such a,
yeah, but she feels deeply authentic all the time, and she seems like, I don't know, it feels like she has a way, I guess, in our generation, maybe growing up having always been watched by social media, like going after social media, there's always a little bit of awareness that a camera's in the room. She has that uncanny ability to be completely relaxed on screen. And it really translates.
And there's something about her that feels deeply unperformative, as much as what we're seeing is literally being recorded for a TV show. I mean, since Secret Lives of Mormon Wives started, they have been cranking out seasons. Every season is about them doing press for the previous season. Like they're always making this show.
I was watching, oh my God, last night and this morning, I was watching as much of season 4 as I could for this episode. And it's crazy because in the middle of season 4, they're doing the reunion for season 3. And they're like, well, this is going to change the trajectory of season 4. I was like, give these girls a break.
I mean, they're always recording the show. They're cranking it out.
And then plus it's on TikTok, plus it's on Instagram. So, and I mean, I will say there's something about Taylor where I feel like sometimes the women, they all have this way of playing this game of being like, what about mom talk? They really adhere to the fake narratives of the show that like keep the fourth wall somewhat intact. There's something about Taylor will get on screen and just be like, you're not doing what's right for you. Like like she does just kind of cut through the bullshit while still being so sincerely and authentically messy.
Yeah. And I guess what I was going to say about that is that it's authentically messy. Like she is not someone who's, I feel like
she doesn't have a husband coming in and being like, well, I heard this. She is falling apart.
Yes. And I feel like we see this on other reality shows, the way people are, and maybe it's because the show is constantly filming, but I feel like we see it with Summer House, right? People are saving up their personal drama for when the camera shows up. She is just like a live wire. She's not amplifying anything for good TV. She is.
So, as Ashley said, she was announced as this season's Bachelorette. And the interesting thing about where we are right now in the world is that the season of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives was shot right as she was leading up to going on The Bachelorette, shooting The Bachelorette. And then after shooting The Bachelorette, they aired that season of Secret Lives with Mormon Wives right before we were supposed to air The Bachelorette.
Right. And something else that's happening right now in the world is that the Bachelor franchise is flailing. The Bachelor franchise used to have a pretty consistent schedule of
30 hours a week.
30 hours a week, but it was in the spring. They would air, like starting around January, they would air a season of The Bachelor. Then whoever was like the crowd favorite from The Bachelor would go on to be The Bachelorette. I think they would air that over the summer, and then all of the other scraps who'd come forward as crowd faves would go on Bachelor in Paradise in like August. And that season would air in August. And then the favorite from The Bachelorette would become the new Bachelor. That would record in like November to be aired in January. Like it was a year-round schedule. They stopped that schedule last year. They've added a couple other franchises. They added Golden Bachelor, which is old people Bachelor.
They're flailing so bad. They're like, what do the people like? Old? We tried every hot young thing on Instagram we could get a hold of. Every sexy preschool teacher has now either found or not found love.
So they were really banking on Taylor Frankie Paul to revive the franchise.
And I have to say, I thought she would have.
I thought she would have, because if you didn't notice, there was no Bachelorette last summer. There was no Bachelor season this winter.
Oh, I didn't notice.
The Bachelorette was supposed to air in March, which is not when a typical Bachelorette season starts. And it was going to be Taylor Frankie Paul. The only other Bachelor we've gotten in the last year, there was still Bachelor in Paradise, and then we still had Golden Bachelor, which since its first season, the viewership is down 60%.
Shit.
So that was a failed experiment, trying to put old people on TV.
Well, it worked once, but it turns out they need a new shtick every time.
Yeah. A lot of Bachelor experts, which is something that exists because the show's been on for years, are saying this is the nail in the coffin. Like this, they can't crawl it back from this. So then this February, there was another domestic incident between Taylor and Dakota. This meant two things. One, a second domestic incident that is public knowledge between Taylor and Dakota.
People are really upset that this seemed to suggest that she had not in fact found love.
That she's back with Dakota.
That the season was spoiled and that she was not healed by her future husband's touch on reality TV in such a way that she would be able to fully and wholly extricate herself from the toxic relationship she had with her baby daddy for the last 4 years, up to and including the night before The Bachelorette. Something that is important that has come out of this season of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives that was also kind of turning people against Taylor Frankie Paul is that in it, she is like having crash out after crash out about Dakota. They claim they haven't been together for about a year. She tries dating this new guy. He's sleeping with other women. She's really upset. It culminates in the night before she leaves for The Bachelorette. She has sex with him and says, like, I'm ovulating. I could be the first pregnant Bachelorette. Which,
it's tough. I'm not saying there's a sanctity to the franchise, but I will say, like, right before you go through this charade of dating 22 people to choose your husband, it would be crazy to be pregnant with a 23rd suitor's child.
A dark horse, they call it. It's how you know you're always in the game. Do you know what I mean? Like, it could be any of us at any time.
Anyway, so after this domestic incident in February, there was a pause in the filming of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, and all of the Secret Lives who had a joint deal with Cinnabon lost that sponsorship. Cinnabon said that this no longer aligns with our brand values.
I mean, how could it not align with the brand values? What's a Cinnabon? Fucking messy.
What's a
Cinnabon? It's mini, it's stuck together. It's not good for you.
A sweet treat.
It's something that you like crave, you give in, you eat it, you feel like shit. If that doesn't look like the Taylor, Frankie, Paul, Dakota relationship, I mean, that's the pitch, right? Instead of fucking your baby daddy, could you satisfy it with a Cinnabon?
Cinnabon? Call us.
I have an idea. I actually eat so much more Cinnabon than you'd realize.
No, I know exactly how much Cinnabon you eat. And I think that's good. I think it's good to keep you cinnamon and sweet. Anyway, so Cinnabon has more values than ABC, obviously. ABC made no moves to change a thing about their promotion schedule, about their production. Taylor Frankie Paul still went to the Oscars to promote her upcoming Bachelorette season.
So the news that broke was basically like, suddenly it was out in March that 3 weeks earlier there had been this domestic dispute between Taylor and Dakota. It has been described in reports as they were fighting in the car. Taylor like accidentally spilled her drink on him and his car. He started screaming at her and then she choked him with his necklace.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning that unfortunately in this situation it means that like because she's the one that like broke the violence barrier, she was the perpetrator.
Mm-hmm.
He then accused her of domestic violence and child endangerment once again, when she had already been accused of and of course was still on probation.
So
the news leaked because under this like umbrella of, did you know they stopped filming Secret Lives? And the question was, why did they stop filming? And there was a couple of reasons given. One was that Dakota had like fled the scene and they didn't want to keep filming unless he was there because they wanted to catch his reunion on camera.
Like his reunion with Taylor after the incident.
Later, people were saying, no, the other moms wouldn't film with her. And that's why they had to stop filming. I'm like, it doesn't feel like him leaving would have anything to do with whether or not they were filming the other moms. It feels like the other moms could still be filmed without Taylor or Dakota. But it comes out the weekend before the Oscars. ABC censored the Oscars.
She still does like Good Morning America following that. I think she did some morning show.
When she did Good Morning America, it was to address the allegation.
Right.
And this was still when they thought it was salvageable.
Right.
As Ashley pointed out, we were all kind of, one of those things was like, oh, it happened again. And as Ashley said, she goes, oh, she got into a fight with the guy that launched the show. What do you mean this is news?
A fight with the guy whose fight launched the show. So the 2023 domestic dispute ended up being a part of the storyline of the first season. It ended up being kind of the pivotal moment of the first episode.
Yeah,
they used police body cam footage from her arrest to launch the entire show that now they are constantly filming and constantly in a cycle of.
Yeah. I mean, they opened with the body cam footage. That's like the moment that, would the soft swinging be enough? No. They said, well, now we're really interested.
Yes. So that became the launch pad of the show, was this domestic incident between Taylor and Dakota.
Flash forward, we're now 2026, February. They've had another incident. 3 weeks later, it's outed that this incident has taken place. People are getting upset. They seem more upset than anything about the idea that now they feel the Bachelorette season has been spoiled.
Right.
ABC is plowing forth with their promotion of the show.
They are heavily plowing forth.
Yeah.
They did a whole reunion with all of the previous Bachelorettes coming to like support Taylor and her launch as Bachelorette.
Yeah.
Then
that same Tuesday, that very morning that she did Good Morning America,
the footage from the night in 2023 that Dakota filmed was released. TMZ obtained the footage. It's unclear exactly how.
Well, they have confirmed via DM. I saw the screenshot on Reddit. So I guess take that for what you will. But it seemed like a legit screenshot. They said, we did not get it from the court. Someone sent it to us.
Right.
But someone, an individual unnamed, sent them footage that was used as evidence in court that had previously been unseen by the public, but could be seen by like the executives, anybody that was part of that case. It was not necessarily sealed.
Right.
It was not impossible to get a hold of.
So the footage showed Taylor screaming, grabbing Dakota's hair.
Yeah.
She starts throwing chairs at him.
It's her kind of getting him in a headlock. He's kind of getting away and kind of like holding up a camera and being like, stop acting like this. She then takes 3 bar stools and throws one right at him. And then he goes, your kid's in the room. Your daughter's here. She then follows him with 2 more, throws both. The third one, her daughter's on a couch between Taylor with a bar stool and Dakota. And she throws the bar stool over the couch at Dakota and does hit her daughter. The video ends with the sound of her daughter screaming. And apparently in the police report, it does say like when they arrived, the daughter had a goose egg. Her child did experience like violence at the hands of her mother. I do think it is a different thing than like hitting your kid on purpose, but I do think her child was in a very dangerous situation.
Right. So after this video is released, ABC releases a statement saying they are not going to be airing this season of The Bachelorette. And it's unclear. There's a lot of conversations about like what's going to happen. People keep saying ABC is going to lose tens of millions of dollars. ABC has tens of millions of dollars to lose, I think.
I mean, there's been a lot of accusations of lawsuits on all sides. They're like ABC might sue Taylor for a morality clause. People are saying that the men of the season may and should band together to sue Taylor or ABC for their lost season. Which to me, I say, if you think that that's fair, I better never hear you say that a woman is just using a reality show for fame or that a woman shouldn't do that. I'm sorry. Are they not there for the right reasons? If you think that Taylor, Frankie, Paul almost spoiled your idea of what's going to happen at the end of The Bachelorette, but then think that the men should sue for like unpaid damages for their potential careers of, what did you say? Selling
Fit tummy teas? No.
I think you said they need these jobs selling protein powders to buy all of their brand new veneers.
Yeah, to pay off their next set of veneers. Because you got to get those things replaced. And I'll tell you what, I saw the portraits of the men on this season, and they're all coming in with new chompers. Anyway, so a lot of things are happening here. First of all, the official ABC statement said, in light of the newly released video just surfaced today, we have made the decision not to move forward with the season of The Bachelorette at this time, and our focus is on supporting the family. I feel a lot of things. I have big feelings about this. Let me get through them. One, I think it's ridiculous for ABC to cancel the season based on this video because the information in the video was public. Okay, but
that's not true. That wasn't a public video.
I said the information in the video was public. And the child endangerment, the kid getting hit with the chair, that was all written in detail in the statements that were released in 2023. I think it's fair for the audience to say, I no longer support Taylor because of this video. I think for ABC and their statement to say it's because of the video, I find to be bullshit. That being said, I also think they never should have cast her in the first place. The problem is I don't feel she should have ever been cast as the Bachelorette. I think that that's ridiculous for a number of reasons.
Like, they need to be doing wellness checks on these people. Like, this is the exact kind of background report you need to do on a person before you let them helm a romantically led TV show. Are they still in the middle of like a domestic violence situation?
Right. And I think you and I have gone back and forth on whether or not this video changes things. I think for the public, it changes things. I think for the executives, I think the fact that there was a written account of her striking a child with a chair, which was public. The video wasn't public, but the written account was. To cast her as the Bachelorette, given that information, is absurd. So to say this video changes things for us as like a TV network, that's ridiculous. I think as personal people with feelings, that's fair.
Well, and I 100% agree. And I feel like, as you're saying, like, oh, it was publicly written. I feel like I didn't know that. I guess whenever I had thought about that first fight, I thought about a couple drunk, whatever. I mean, it's not great. If she had asked my advice, I would have said, don't get back together with him. It seems like this is a really toxic situation that's probably abusive. Like, you shouldn't be in this. Like, I think you need to get out of it to save yourself. You know, for as much as they talk about that moment, I feel that they really, and you've pointed this out, like edit it specifically in the public perspective to edit out the kid involvement. Because I feel like, you know, obviously I'm not a Mormon Wives stan, but I'm a pretty
You're a watcher.
Online person. And I feel like I'm pretty aware of what Taylor Frankie Paul's up to these days and those days. And it's the first time I had like reckoned with it in a way that I was like, I don't want to say this changes my opinion of her as a person. I do think that she is in a really bad situation. And I don't think she is somebody who like wakes up in the morning to like hit her kid. But I do think she is in a bad situation that has hit a rock bottom, that has brought her to court. And she has not changed the situation to like keep her kids safe. And I think it's fair to be like, I don't think that a woman who's still like in the throes of an addictive, toxic, mentally unwell, unsafe situation should be used for entertainment.
And I agree with that. And that's why I think, because I also didn't realize her kid had been involved in this. And I think that when we talk about it and when the show talked about it primarily, I do think you had to read the police report to get the full story, but that report was Googleable. And I think that if you and I had been planning to work with her in any business capacity, we would have Googled her. Do you know what I mean? And I think if we were a corporation.
I think if we were the execs. But we'd never be the execs because we try not to exploit people too badly.
Exactly. But
I will say if she had been like, oh my God, I love your podcast, I want to come on as an interviewee, I would not have been like, well, let me get my lawyer to look at
her. Oh my God, no. I meant if we were going to do a production around her.
I was like, I don't know. If she called me today and was like, do you want to do a TikTok dance together? I'd be like, okay, let me shoot the airport.
No, there's a really long line at the airport. See if she can go somewhere else.
Maybe we could meet in the middle car-wise.
But what I'm saying is I think there's a difference between what the public is generally aware of and what the people who are hiring her to be the central piece of a TV show should be aware of. And they obviously were aware of it because it was public information. Even if they hadn't seen the video, the chair thing was public information.
No, of course, they have, in theory, people on staff whose whole job is make sure you're like mentally fit.
And I think that two things are true. She, as a mother, I believe, has a responsibility to exit a situation that is putting her children in danger. I think her being in the same room as Dakota obviously puts her children in danger. That being said, I also think the industry has a responsibility to not be platforming people who are in these situations who
Both
are
her and specifically Dakota.
Yes.
To keep him in the cast, to send him to goddamn Vanderpump Villa just to like get under her skin. I do believe she is being like instigated. I do believe she's being provoked. But at the same time, I agree. Like in the same way, I see it very similar. Like if you're someone who's struggling with addiction, I don't think you're evil and I don't think you're irredeemable. But I do think if you are in an active addiction that's constantly keeping your children in an unsafe place, like, you know what I mean? As long as you are not recovered, those children have a right to safety. And I think the tricky thing here is a lot of people are being very defensive of Taylor Frankie Paul in a way that I understand.
Right. They're calling it reactive abuse.
They're saying she is clearly in a situation where she is being abused and she is like responding and she's being provoked. And like, because of the patriarchy, listen, as much agency as you want to give a woman, and like I feel like that's a debate you could have within a million percents of a centimeter or whatever, but the children, it is not their fault and they cannot be consistently in an unsafe place
while she figures out.
They can't be just like this symbol of a hypothetical perfect world. It's funny, I feel like it really reminds me of like the Lindy West world of like, well, at the end of the day, it's not Taylor's fault because of the patriarchy. She can't be held responsible for the violence she inflicted on her own child because it's responsive to like him manipulate. Okay, if your kid gets hit in the head with a stool, somebody has to say, well, that's enough. And if it's not Taylor, then somebody has to come in and say, we'll call it enough until you can get it together.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. I think with the show The Bachelorette, ABC executives are the perpetrator. I think in the situation between her and Dakota, I think Dakota is a dangerous person, and I think she is behaving in a way that is dangerous to her children.
I agree. And I mean, it's dangerous to herself. Like, I mean, it is destroying her life. But like, you know, she's an adult. It's her right to destroy her life if she wants. But I do think it's unfair to suggest that like you can't be worried on a child's behalf. And even if it's, you know what I mean, even if you want to say like, I'm not even saying it's completely her fault and how dare she or whatever, but I am saying you can't say that a child has to sit that out to like uphold your feminist ideal of what's fair in a patriarchal world. I mean, this is a woman who has a lot of money, a lot of power. I mean, she was literally sent away for 3 months to go meet a new husband. It's not an impossible situation to extricate yourself from. I think it's unfair to a lot of women who do extricate themselves from very difficult situations to act like
it's impossible.
Yeah. A lot of women have done a lot of like brave, difficult, dangerous things to like protect themselves and their children, and to sit here and be like Taylor Frankie Paul with her big house in the suburbs.
To say she's not capable is diminishing.
Yeah. And I don't want to villainize her. I don't think what she's doing is evil. I understand it. I have a lot of empathy for like, I think she's clearly in so much pain. She has a family that doesn't really support her. She's stuck in these terrible cycles of being attacked online. And I think a lot is riding on her shoulders and she's like going through it. Like, you know what I mean? I think she's really stuck in a lot of like traumatic cycles, but that's not her children's fault.
Right. So Dakota has been granted temporary custody of their shared child ever. And Taylor doesn't have visitation rights until their April 7th hearing.
I wonder what happened. I believe that whether or not she accidentally or on purpose spilled a soda, I don't care. I'm sure he yelled at her in a really scary way. But like if she went and grabbed his necklace and in grabbing his necklace off of him, like hit her kid in the face, like you can't have a pattern of like being violent in front of your children in a way that then hits your kid. Like, and I don't think Dakota's a safer person necessarily, but I am like
what happened?
What would be the rock bottom for her to say, this is not safe for my kids. I have to like, not be in a car alone with this man.
And now that they have a shared child, it is harder to extricate herself from the situation, because when they first got into their domestic dispute in 2023, they did not have a kid together. It gets harder and harder the more time you spend. This quote I found particularly preposterous. On behalf of Dakota, a source said Dakota didn't leak the video. They said he knew that there was a possibility it could come out, but he was not going to be the one to proactively do that because he'd always wanted a decent relationship with Taylor. It's been really hard to achieve that, but he wants to co-parent well. That's a lie.
Right. I mean, so that's the other thing is who leaked this video on purpose to kind of ruin her chance at the Bachelorette. It does feel like he or someone that he knows on his behalf was tanking her chances.
Well, because of the timing of the release of this video, it feels very specifically targeted at her Bachelorette experience.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that's also coupled with, like, you know, I mean, there also was a whole other thing 3 weeks ago. But, like, it's funny because the whole season of The Secret Lives of Mormon Wives this year is about these men who have been just like these fucking unemployed duds. First of all, they were mad at their wives for not being good enough, dutiful women and mothers and whatever. And now they're like leeching off their success by trying to create a rival social media presence called Dad Talk. And they are such pathetic losers. I like am almost irate with Hulu. Like, I don't know how to punish the show for even showing them to us. Like, they're such pathetic succubus losers. They are nothing but leeches. They're financial, energetic, social leeches, and they're ugly.
Yeah.
I mean, that Jordan is one of the uglier men. He's got a head like you drew a human face on a gremlin.
I mean, he looks like he's met a witch in a cave and things did not go right for him. A witch doctor.
He looks like a come-to-life cartoon where you go, well, it works as a cartoon, but in real life, the proportions are all wrong. He looks like a face on a balloon. He looks like an Airhead commercial. Anyway, I hate him so much. I mean, the joke is, like, we're watching it happen to those women too. And of course, those women will never rally around Taylor in any meaningful way. But it's like, this season has been about how far will these men go to undermine the women that they supposedly love, or at least have loved in the past.
And who are paying their rent.
Who are paying. It's not enough that these women support them financially and have bared their children. They now must like take them down because they can't stand to be in their shadows. So listen, I don't think it was wrong to pull The Bachelorette. That's my final take. Because I also think it wouldn't have helped Taylor for to be there up there every week. The social media abuse she would have received. I mean, to stay in the public eye and not let this thing blow over is like, I think, going to be very dangerous for her. The last thing anybody needs is her being super scrutinized through this lens. I don't think that's better for her, her family, her kids, anybody.
Yeah, I guess I think that if anyone in the Bachelorette situation needs to be held accountable, I think it's ABC. I think that if anyone in the Taylor Dakota situation needs to be held accountable, it's everyone.
People being like, they shouldn't take her show from her. I'm like, nobody's entitled to be the Bachelorette, okay?
I'm sorry.
And also, it is
actually, can I say, one of the least democratic platforms. Like, I think almost no one is entitled to be the Bachelorette.
If anything, there shouldn't have ever been a Bachelorette.
In fact, even people who have been the Bachelorette are not entitled to still call themselves. Like, it's such a preposterous concept to say, like, how dare they take her show from her? That's the least of her worries.
Yeah, and I also think it's beneficial for her. I mean, I do think the idea that they would sue her as if this is news to them. I mean, they were looking to exploit how. I mean, their whole premise was, she's so messy, what's she gonna do next?
Yeah, literally. The entire cycle of this show was gonna be like, can this cuckoo bird find love?
I really do think like that's her incredible niche as a reality star. Is she is like the messiest woman that people are still rooting for, and not an ironic way.
Yeah.
Compared to, say, someone like Luann.
Right.
Where I feel like people root for her in a very like gay camp way. You know what I mean? I feel like if I were to watch an episode of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives with my dad, he'd be like, well, I hope that girl Taylor finds love. Like, there is something where you so sincerely are rooting for her. And she so constantly skirts the well of how deep you can go before people will turn their back. So, I mean, only time will tell how we, like, a lot of people have come back from worse. Women, I don't know. Well, yeah, women.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
With that being said, should we head over to gay camp?
Oh my God. Did you know being gay is something you could do with one single person who happens to be your husband's new girlfriend?
So we have done a deep dive on Lindy West, who has just put out a new book called Adult Braces, in which she details her much scrutinized throuple relationship
via
road trip.
Yes. Me and Ashley were just talking. I have to say, a road trip is never something that's particularly tickled my fancy, but Ashley's interested.
I think I'd be interested. I don't crave a road trip, but I think if it was the solution to a problem, like how do I get bugged to California for the winter, I wouldn't be...
You wouldn't balk at it.
I wouldn't be like, that's the last thing I want to do.
Okay. Some people love a road trip.
I know. I think there are places I want to see. There's things I want to do where, like, if the opportunity arose, it wouldn't be like, Lord help me. I think it could be kind of fun. Me on the dusty road with my bug by my side.
I wonder if you would like it.
Well, it's not a permanent situation. So I think if I hated it,
yeah, you could.
I think I could grit through it.
Anyway, this book answers all the questions of what if Miranda July had kept driving?
So I want to back it up. Claire read Adult Braces. I went through a bit of a history of Lindy West. I read some of her early work. I read Shrill, and then I went into like her original non-monogamy reveal in 2022. Her husband and her partner, Roya, I guess her husband's partner, Roya, did a video interview where they like revealed the information. And then on Substack, she did an AMA about that because it was obviously quite viral. So first, Shrill.
Well, can I ask you something before we even get into Shrill?
Mm-hmm.
How'd it feel diving back into your old waters? The memoir territory?
You know, it reminded me a lot of the Twitter era memoirs where you're like, well, this was a very specific type of writing from a very specific time that I can only be so critical of because it wasn't meant to last forever.
It's like when people are mad at Friends and you're like, listen, when it came out, we didn't know you could have a diverse friend group.
So I was trying to read it more for the content and the context of Lindy and Aham's relationship more than I was reading it for content. I do think some of the things that stuck out to me were generally, I think part of the current rejection of her work has to do with the fact that she is extremely of a time. And, you know, reading her writing style in this moment, like reading her 2016 writing style compared to I did read a couple of the essays from Adult Braces, which is her current writing style, like it hasn't really evolved. And I think a lot of the takeaways I had from Shrill were that she's quite self-infantilizing. So it makes sense that she hasn't like ultimately grown that much. And I think too, when your audience is aging and you aren't necessarily, I think it creates a distance, obviously. And I think that's one of the many things that people are reacting to emotionally in this moment. The thing about Shrill is that it really, when it hits, it hits. I didn't read it saying, how the fuck was this ever a major book? There are moments in it where you go, I mean, this chapter is like 2016 to its core, and this chapter is quite insightful about like fatness in society. And obviously, as a straight-sized person, if you don't agree with me, that's fine. I felt she did a really good job of reconciling the conversations around like what makes you feel most comfortable and like what makes you happy in your body compared to the way society views fat bodies and stigmatizes them. And she doesn't try to like extricate her own experience from that truth. And I found it really well done.
That's so interesting because I feel one of the big problems of her current writing is there doesn't seem to be a reckoning with two things at once.
Interesting. So, you know, I feel like a lot of her work that originally put her on the map is of that type that was keen to go viral in 2016, an exploration of why did we like this movie? This movie actually sucks, you know? A real like, has anyone even considered the timelines? Would this movie have even made sense in the era of cell phones? No, it wouldn't have. It wouldn't have, actually.
Suspend your disbelief, Lindy. Don't you know about movie magic? You're a witch, aren't you?
But she, you know, she gets hooked on timelines. She gets hooked on the realities of animated characters in a way where you kind of just want to shake her and go, enough.
That's so funny. That's how I felt about this book. There were times where I was like, you gotta let it go. We'll give you, you're the wokest one. You win. Please release me from your fucking death grip of Twitter performative language.
Which eventually brings us to her relationship with Aham, who she has known for years. So she was originally a writer in Seattle. She wrote for The Stranger, which is a Seattle magazine or a newspaper. Then she wrote for Jezebel. She's been published a ton. She wrote a couple books, including this one, Shrill, which later became a TV show starring A.D. Bryant. When she met Aham, they had known each other for 8 years, and he was married twice during that time. I think they knew each other like in the Seattle creative scene.
Married twice?
Mm-hmm.
Was there a reason?
Yeah, sometimes people get married and then they get divorced and they get married again. Get divorced again. And then they get married again.
And then they want to get a divorce, but they go, there's got to be another way out of this thing.
So they'd known each other for 8 years. They were together and then they were both moving to LA. And then it turns out he was only planning to move to LA for like a couple months. She was going to go for a year and try it out. I think she had recently become quite successful in her writing.
Okay, and I need you for the audience. This isn't going to hit for everyone, but please, for the audience, explain to these people why he was planning on moving to LA for a few months.
Because he had made it to the finals in NBC's Stand Up for Diversity contest, a competition that takes place over, at most, a weekend. I think the winner gets maybe like an email of someone who works at NBC.
Yeah, I think you get to then be like in a showcase, which again could be done in a weekend.
Yeah.
I guess he was so sure that he was going to razzle dazzle them that he was like, well, then I got to stay in town for pilot season. They're all going to want me for their pilot.
But exactly. And I think that this really paints a picture of who he is, someone who really is like, there is a fast track to success and I deserve to be on it. Like, I'm the talented one who should be on that track. And so as soon as they see me, I'm there. Like, I've arrived. So she moves to LA. He's going to be staying with a friend. She's renting a house with her friend who I know personally. Aham ends up staying with them anyway. And then he's kind of going back. He doesn't
As
make
a
it.
friend?
No, as a relationship. Then he's going back and forth to Seattle a bunch because he has children there. They kind of are ships in the night. They've broken up and like are missing each other between Seattle and LA. She gets back to Seattle. Her father ends up passing. And then she calls Aham to be like, please be with me right now. So then he comes, he supports her through grief. And then they have like this marathon 2-day conversation where they talk about like the truth of their relationship. She says that in being in a relationship with him, she like lost a piece of herself. She views herself as extremely clingy and someone who is likely to mirror the person she's in a relationship with because she wants to be loved so badly.
That comes across in this book as well. That's a real problem she has, is that when she's on her own, she sees herself as half of Lindy and Aham instead of one whole Lindy.
And so she realizes, her sister talks to her and says, you need to love with an open hand. If you're clutching a bird and it can't fly away. That's what love is, a whack across the face. So, she's saying all these things that I think are largely symptoms of just like a relationship that ran its course. But instead, she's having all these realizations about the way that she should be different and she was suffocating him and she was creating a version of their relationship that was untenable. So she says all these like very self-infantilizing things. She goes, when we were first together, I was younger. And then after my dad died, I was older. And she was like ready for a real relationship because now she's experienced grief and death and she's like ready to be an adult in this relationship with him. 6 months have passed. You know what I mean? Like, and I get saying this experience changed me, but I also think making decisions like this in grief are different.
And also tying somebody that way so emotionally, like there is something about the person that was there for you in your most difficult times is going to like lay stake in your heart in a way that maybe isn't continuable or like reasonable.
Yes. And obviously the thing that we now know that she talks about in Adult Braces that we didn't know at the time of Shrill's publication, and she doesn't include it in Shrill at all, is that during that 2-day marathon conversation where they rediscuss the terms of their relationship, he says, I cannot ever be monogamous again.
Sure. Famously, because of the racist implications.
Exactly. You can't colonize another person. But I do think, famously, you can't colonize people.
Or you shouldn't.
And that's
the
not
problem
love.
is famously you can, but they're fighting against it.
Right. So, and everyone agrees. But
everybody who's read anything.
But I think it's really important to contextualize that conversation in the wake of the loss of her father. Because I think that the things you agree to when you're just hoping to have a person you love continuing to support you, like the things you might say in that conversation are very different than things you might say if you're not grieving.
Also, the entire relationship is contextualized as a fat woman. She had been told her whole life, nobody will really love you. She had only had bad relationships. She did not believe that somebody would love her the way she felt Aham loved her.
Exactly.
So now she's coming at it with like these two weights of the story she's been told about herself and what she deserves, and then the way that she's been treated. And then on top of that, she's especially feeling vulnerable. And here's this man who seems like he's gone above and beyond. And I agree that your ex-boyfriend showing up and taking care of you, and she has this story about him. He now goes by they, them pronouns. Listen.
He, they, them.
I'm going to go him, because that's what he was up until the moment there was backlash. He was making her family pancakes, and I do think that's like a really kind, sweet thing for him to have done. I do think there is something about a person who's able to come in these terrible moments that are not infinite and go above and beyond because it's temporary and you get extra credit.
Exactly.
And I used to try to do a joke about being like, yeah, they always say like, you'll find out who your real friends are when you're down and out. But I'm like, actually, it's much harder to be there for someone consistently and when things are going good for them.
Especially when it's something that you want. And he seems very, I would say, not jealous, but he seems to want success in his art as well. And the fact that Lindy is recognized for her writing and her work and he is not feels notable to me.
There's a moment that breakthrough she has with her therapist in Adult Braces where she goes, why is he the only genius? I'm actually more successful. I'm a genius too. And the therapist is like, yes. So it's interesting that also in their dynamic, this woman who is so much more successful than him in the exact industry he wants to be successful at, in their dynamic, he's the genius, even though there's not tangible evidence to the such, as if she has some advantage.
And there doesn't always have to be tangible evidence of genius, of course.
No, but it just seems like if there's two writers together and one has been very successful and the other has been less successful, you don't have to play this game that actually the non-successful one is the better one.
Right.
Especially if we're like, we can't be monogamous because of colonization, then maybe we say, hey, we don't have to undermine a woman just because you think whatever she does doesn't count.
Yeah.
Well, something interesting too that comes out of this book is that what she had always wanted was to be a comedian, a stand-up comedian, but she was scared. And so the fact that he was doing stand-up, I wonder if she played into this narrative of, well, I did the secondary thing. Like, he is the genius.
I mean, and she does diminish. She says, I write about stand-up. I like act like I'm this comedy person, but I'm not. I just write about comedy. I'm not in the comedy world. And he was a finalist at NBC's Stand Up for Diversity, something that only lots of people from each city get to do annually.
And they all go on to greatness. Without fail.
If you are a winner of NBC Stand Up for Diversity, I'm not saying your accomplishment doesn't mean something. I'm just saying it doesn't mean everything.
And I will say I am a failure of Stand Up for Diversity. And I slept on a sidewalk. It was like my first year of comedy. I was like 6 months in and I was like, I think this is my ticket. I slept in a beach chair on 23rd and 6th.
But that's why, like, he also thought this was his ticket. And then you kept doing stand-up and learned that that wasn't a ticket, nor did it really mean much. And he didn't.
No, I learned that I wasn't good enough to do it. And I said, I'll have to start a podcast.
Anyway, so now she's older and ready to renegotiate this relationship. They're back together and they're happy. And
Isn't that funny? She's older and ready to renegotiate, much like a Democrat in a way where only she loses. It's the most liberal thing about her, that she's always renegotiating in a way that she's walking away with a way worse deal.
They're always in talks. She's always holding TSA hostage. And yet,
she's always doing a land acknowledgement to then give up her property to his girlfriend.
So she talks about their relationship, how he didn't want to get married again. He thought 2 marriages was too many and he never saw himself doing that again. But then she convinced him that maybe in 5 years, if they still loved each other so much, they could renegotiate. There's a lot of negotiation in this relationship, as all healthy relationships have. So after 2 years, he does this like big grand gesture, surprise proposal. She's over the moon. They get married a year and a half later. She says that constantly they're in situations where people assume that they aren't a couple. She's constantly dealing with people who are approaching her at like bars, flirting with him, thinking that they're just friends because she's fat and he's thin. And they can't fathom that they would be a couple. That people, like, she's had fans before they were married.
You know what's interesting, though, that she addresses in later books?
The part where she says, people expect me to be married to some tall, skinny dude.
No.
Okay, because that was an exact quote that I read later.
What I find interesting is that she talks about her like difficulties around sex and talking about sex, and she's like very prudish and squeamish, and she's like, I'm the kind of person where if I see 2 people kiss in public, I go, that's disgusting. And I understand that it is like a negative feedback loop of people treat you like you don't exist, so then you kind of cower, and then you know what I mean? But
right.
I wonder if part of the problem of why people always assumed that she was just there as a friend is because she is like distinctly anti-intimacy.
Yeah.
So I wonder if she was like 2 bar seats down being like, what do you mean? That's my husband.
She says they were holding hands.
Okay.
She specifies they were holding hands, and she goes, why would someone think that I'm at a bar holding hands with my roommate? And
well, maybe they thought you were looking for a third, and in which case they were right. You just didn't know it yet.
Anyway, so that's something that I think is of note. She talks a lot in the end of this book about the way she says specifically being fat and happy and in love is a radical act That's why getting married was important to me. Like, she felt that marriage was an important step in their relationship because, like, to be like a public declaration of love when she is fat is a radical thing that was an important step for her to do for herself and to show people, like, you can be deserving of love and fat in our world, which is what I feel is completely undermined by Aham coercing her into a threesome later.
And I do think this idea of the personal being political, which was so the foundational concept of the 2010s feminist blog style writing, is exactly what's gotten us, and specifically Lindy, into problems. This idea that everything is through a lens, everything represents more than just two people figuring out how to live in domesticity together. You know what I mean? I do think this idea, like, there is a shield up, and it's, I'm not getting married necessarily just because I love you and I want to be married, but I'm getting married for all fat women. Yeah. I'm getting married as this radical, and I understand that things can be like, you know, I mean, when you write about it in a memoir, it is being posited as a political act. But I think one of her problems is, and this is my grand thesis of adult braces, which is different than necessarily the specifically polyamory, is that she is a millennial warning to what I would normally consider kind of Gen Z living of everything is these comment section reductive identities. That something interesting that comes up is she's like, whenever I'd get mad at Aham about spending time with Roy or something, he'd always go, I'm a person too, you know. She's a person too, you know. And it's funny because I get what she's saying when she's like, I'm sick of him saying that because I'm a person too. We're all people. We all have wants, like whatever. But I am like, there is something to it that she doesn't see people as people. She says she sees people as what you're looking at on a TikTok screen, what you're looking at on Instagram.
And she's very susceptible to, he uses that heavily to manipulate her.
No, exactly.
Because she subscribes to it.
So one of the things that comes up in adult braces, and I'll do like a full, run through in a minute, but the trauma of being so hated online, it did not go away for her. And I think, I don't know, I wasn't necessarily a Lindy West fan. I think I've known the name for a while, but I couldn't put a finger to her writing specifically in my memory. But she was like a uniquely hated person online. She was somebody who was like a real lightning rod for a while, a Lena Dunham type. And I guess she like put up this brave front of like, come get me trolls, I'm fighting you right back. And that was kind of the hallmark of her writing. But in reality, that left lasting scars that I think were then like torn open by her experience on Shrill, which I really understand and believe is a deeply alienating experience from your own narrative when you're told we're making a TV show out of your life, but like you have nothing to do with it. And also it could be whatever we want.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's wrong that they did that. I am like, well, like you've created a business, things happen. That's why it's not a memoir.
Like, it's hard to know if it's like the network being obnoxious or if it's a memoir and a TV show are different and you have to let go of certain details and you have to let go of certain control when you've never made a TV show before and you're working with people who have made a TV show before.
Even if you have.
Yeah.
TV, film, these are
different.
It's a collaborative experience with specifically TV is a commercial collaborative endeavor where there's going to be lots of checks and balances, lots of rewrites. Things have to be made into 30-minute episodes on larger seasons. The reason you write a memoir is for absolute narrative control. The reason you do TV is something else. And for somebody who's already like kind of fucked up with their sense of self online, to have that happen and like the difference between the power you think you're going to have and the credit you get versus what I get that fucked with her. I don't know that that's necessarily like wrong and unfair.
Right. So now I want to get into the reveal of the non-monogamous throuple. I want to get into the reveal of the throuple, which happened via a YouTube interview. There was a short version that was released publicly, a longer version that was released behind a paywall. I watched the short version. It's called like Underneath It All or something like that, where everyone starts clothed and throughout the course of the interview takes off all their clothes to the point where they're in their underwear.
And this is the theme of the interview for every person, or is this something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Which I didn't know when I started watching it.
This wasn't an idea they came up with. But this is, she's somebody who could be interviewed by anybody.
Right.
So this is what they chose.
So they're doing this interview. It's the three of them. I guess they had been kind of showing it on social media. I went back through her social media in 2021. Roya was like heavily featured in Lindy's Instagram. This was released in 2022. The three of them sit down on these stools throughout the interview. And this is what a lot of the internet was fixated on. Aham has a hand on like Roya's leg, or they're holding hands through most of the interview. He's visibly supporting her, like physically has a hand on her to make sure she feels supported. Whereas Lindy is just like the third person also sitting there and is not like physically connected to them in any way. So in the interview, Aham, in like the establishment of their relationship, says, Lindy and I have always been in a non-monogamous relationship, which, we know from adult braces, she hasn't always believed to be true necessarily. Lindy says, and this is the part that I think people should have fixated on more. Lindy says that when Aham met Roya, she had been in a really bad place and she'd been working on Trill and she'd felt very alienated by kind of the like removal of herself from her own story. And she was just like not in a good way, which made her a very bad partner. And she is crying as this is happening, like as she's explaining this situation. And he has a hand on Roya. And I think, first of all, the visual of that is really tough to watch, like her sitting there crying while the two of them hold each other.
And being like, my trauma at the moment was being removed from my own story, while at home she's being like removed from her own marriage.
But especially just the fact that in general, she's saying, I was having a hard time. I was being a bad partner. Therefore, it makes sense that he had to go find a different partner. Like, no, that does not make sense. Especially if Aham's whole, like, the only good thing about him is that he was like there for you in your time of need when your dad passed. Now we're hearing about another time of need when you were like dealing with something creatively heavy. He had to find a girlfriend because this was too much.
Something interesting too about that period is that she was in New York and he was at an artist residency where he met Roya, and they were separated for a few months. They were already doing their own thing for a month.
Right. And I think that this is something that comes up again in Adult Braces, and I saw her talk about again in another interview where she's really maintains this belief of like when she would get emotionally bogged down with her own shit, it made sense that Aham had to seek love elsewhere. Instead of what I believe is kind of the point of marriage, which is that you like
have somebody to rest on,
have someone to rest on when you're going through it. And I'm not married, so maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe that's just something I made up and it's not true. I think that maybe the truth is if you're going through a hard time, it's okay for your husband to get a different wife.
Well, I didn't sign up for that.
It's just hard to watch Lindy like sobbing about what a tough time she'd be going through while Aham holds Roya's hand. And then another thing that I think is really important to note in this interview before we get to the next section is that they're very insistent that they are an equal throuple. But I don't feel that we ever really get any interaction in this interview or otherwise between Lindy and Roya. Like occasionally they pop up on each other's Instagrams years ago. I feel that it's very much Lindy and Aham and Lindy and Roya and Lindy have like, I guess they all have threesomes and like are friends.
And live together.
Obviously. But I mean, even in that book, there's a section about the way they sleep, which is Lindy and Aham sometimes and Roya and Aham sometimes. Is it ever Lindy and Roya sharing the main bedroom?
No. I will say in an interview I saw, it says that Aham goes between the two women's rooms.
Right.
Which does feel like hugely important versus it had been circulated that the two women switch between his room.
Right.
And the guest room. Which is like a power dynamic that I am like, well, that's fucked. That feels very like king shit.
King shit. But also to call it a three-way equal triangle when it's never Lindy and Roya as the couple sharing a bed, that feels like a lie. And then in this interview, she spoke about it later. So she did an AMA on her Substack where a couple people pointed out the body language of the interview. And she leans on the excuse that Roya is not used to or particularly comfortable with talking about herself publicly in that way. So Aham was being more supportive of Roya than he was of Lindy, who is famous for talking about her personal life on the internet and like didn't need as much support. And whether or not that's true, Lindy is the one crying in the interview. You know what I mean?
Well, for a moment, maybe the two of you together with one hand could rest a hand on her.
Exactly.
The fact that Roya didn't feel compelled to like
reach out. No one reaches out. Like no one helps her. I think it's just like really tough to watch and to see and to watch her excuse constantly. One of the questions in the AMA, someone said, pre-Roya and early Aham, how did you get comfortable with an open relationship? What was that process like? She says, I actually avoided talking about it until Aham forced the issue. I was never opposed to non-monogamy conceptually. The idea has always made sense to me, but it was scary in practice, almost impossible with the self-esteem issues I was battling.
That's also not true. She pretty specifically is like, I wanted a monogamy, but I couldn't have it, so I had to settle.
By far, the most important step in the process for me was me working really, really hard with my therapist to overcome my insecurities and to recover my sense of self. I had to get to the point where I didn't feel like I would die without this relationship in order to figure out what I actually wanted, which turned out to be this.
How lucky.
How lucky indeed. And then she talks about how she had to do frequent check-ins with herself and realizing that she didn't always feel the way she expected to feel. I wasn't always sad when Aham was away with Roya. I wasn't always anxious. I started to really love having some time alone, which allowed me to realize maybe I wasn't upset about what I thought I was upset about. Maybe my pain wasn't about him spending time with someone else. It was about this distance that had developed between us. So as we healed the distance and repaired our closeness, everything got easier until one day it flipped completely and I wanted to meet Roya. And then I met her and discovered she's the most lovable person on the planet. Oh, and also I started taking Zoloft and discovered that I had been tortured for years by extremely demonic, intrusive thoughts, which I'd assumed were just my trustworthy inner monologue. So getting rid of those made everything in my life 1,000 times easier. She's like kind of drugging herself into accepting this situation. Like, no, she obviously, if she needs medication, she needs medication. But I think to say like my qualms with my husband having another girlfriend, like I was unmedicated, that's just not what that is. So now let's talk about adult braces.
Okay, so I felt my hand was forced. I had to read this book. It has gotten a lot of flack on the internet, kind of as Ashley wrapped up. And I'm glad you got it over with on the polyamory front, because a lot of people have been pretty upset with her talking about polyamory, because much like her first book, it starts off unsure and it ends with this happy ending of we're together. And it turned out this thing that I thought was a nightmare and what I specifically didn't want and what I had been battling for years is exactly what I wanted. It turns out I had always wanted my husband to have this girlfriend and I wanted us all to live in my house on my dime.
Yay.
And we'll get to the response from the internet afterwards, but people have been feeling betrayed, incredulous, outraged. People have had a lot to say about what seems to be a lie that she thought she could pull one over on us. I don't know. I feel like people are almost pissed that this woman that they thought was so smart and such a good writer has now come back. You know what I mean? I feel like it's like the great magician, the Wizard of Oz has showed up to be like, is this your card? And we're all like, no. People seem really upset.
Yeah. And I think part of that is a little bit fair because you can't be a role model without other people agreeing that you're a role model, but it's like a mutually agreed upon relationship where you like want to present yourself in a specific way as like the speaker for this group. And that group holds you there as someone who they agree is doing a decent job speaking on your behalf for the most part. And she has said, like, you know, she wanted to get married to show fat women that they could experience love and joy. And you don't need to change your body and change yourself for society's standards. Like, you deserve love. And so for her to sit here and expose this relationship that seems extremely coerced. Normally, I feel like people have a parasocial relationship where I want to be like, get over yourself. But I do see how this could feel like a really extraordinary betrayal to some people. Oh, the other thing I was going to say, sorry. In the intro to Shrill, she talks about how few fat role models there are in pop culture. So I feel like by presenting this list of like, there is no one setting an example on our behalf. Like most of the fat characters in Disney movies are evil or pathetic. Like, she is listing out all of these fat characters in pop culture saying like no one is representing us well. And then she goes on to like write about her life in this way that is ideally, it seems to inspire fat women. And then she goes on to make a TV show. Like, you know what I mean? Like she is creating a positive role model in fat culture almost explicitly. And so then to set an example that's pretty upsetting to people, I see how they'd be mad.
Yeah, I guess that's the problem is it's so hard to have your lived life. I don't, it's hard. And I actually have a lot of empathy for her. And I think, interestingly enough, a more honest discussion of that would have been well received. I think there's a portion of people who feel betrayed. I don't even think they have time to feel betrayed because she's saying I still have it all. It's great. I think people are feeling very frustrated by her thinking she's like tricking us and her stuff. I don't know. People are really having a hard time with it.
For the most part, I was feeling pretty sad for her because I do think it is a hard position to be in, to be, you know, maybe she is happy, but to still sit there on this pedestal and say like, I have what we can all best expect.
Yeah, and it's funny because I don't think she's saying that, but I think she's too afraid. I mean, here's the problem is it's her real life.
Yes.
And I think that's the brave thing to say. I think that's the point we're all at in with like online discourse of being like, well, what do we do when things get tricky?
Yeah.
And I think as our like bravest warrior out there, the fact that she wasn't ready to have these conversations, like the text, both in content and in form, feel very 2016. I mean, there was a couple lines that I underlined and went, well, this would have crushed on Tumblr.
Yeah. But to what you were saying is I did feel really sad for her in the way that I think she still feels the need to uphold this position and the way she's held to that position.
But I think that's where she needed to be honest. That's where she let everybody down, because they're actually if she had cut out the poly stuff in this book is a really exploration of like, what do you do after you've gone viral?
Yeah. I really empathize with the position of I'm telling you my experience and then people getting overly protective of their experience and what they want to see from you. Like, I think the fact that her life does exist in this space of like, there is an expectation of her, but also she's extremely susceptible to that expectation. And so what she's having a hard time with now is that she, I think, did still want to be this role model person, and people are having a hard time with the position that she's now presenting as like her ideal and her reality. And so it is this like complicated back and forth where you're like, I get that people can't control what you do with your life, and they obviously shouldn't be able to, but it's like a tough relationship you have with the public and like a group that isn't heavily represented in pop culture.
Okay, so this book, Adult Braces, opens first of all with this story about how she thought someone had mailed her a bomb, and it turned out it was her friend's son alarm clock. And it ends with this pithy little noticing, it wasn't the first time I thought something was a bomb when it was actually a chance to wake up. And I do think this is an interesting theme throughout this book. Is she is a writer, she is a memoirist, she is an essayist, she's a nonfiction personal writer. Her whole life is like looking for the story, looking for the narrative, looking for the beginning, middle, and ending in this way that I find very interesting, because she is always looking for things to be wrapped up. And we'll get to it later, but Sachi Cool wrote a review for Slate of this book after meeting her and doing an interview. And her taking away was, you know, when you're in the middle of a crisis, you're in the middle of living life, it's hard to know when you've gotten to the lesson part. And when you send a book, you have a deal, you have a deadline, you kind of have to hope wherever you've ended up is the grand lesson. And I do actually think that that's like a perfect assessment of this book and maybe the failings of this book is, and we see it all the time in memoirs where you go, I don't know that this is the end of the story. I also think she's somebody that does, because of her role model status, needs it to be a happy ending. So she opens with deciding to go on this road trip to Kokomo from the Beach Boys. She starts the road trip. It does turn out that Kokomo does not exist. It's just like a vaguely Key West area.
Yeah. And
she's like, I didn't want to do it though. I kept saying no. And finally my husband is like, why wouldn't you go? Please go.
Please leave me be.
And also, like, what reason wouldn't she have to go? She's somebody who has to live life to write about it. Anyway, in truth, the only thing stopping me was that long ago I'd convinced myself I had no interest in adventure because I was an agoraphobic wreck from being a fat woman in public. At some point, I decided that I was an indoor person, a vicarious person, that my exploration was over, that the door was shut, and only home was safe. So she's like, I'm doing this for me to grow. But also she's doing it because, you know, her home is no longer a safe place. Her home is where, like, the person she shares her home with is making her specifically feel like she's not enough. So then, of course, she gets into what the book's about. She got adult braces because, I guess, through anxiety, she'd been, like, grinding her teeth in such a way that they were no longer aligned, and it would, like, cause them all to shatter and fall out.
Uh-oh.
So it wasn't even cosmetic. It was, like, structural. And she said this was especially hard for her because her whole life she had made fun of people for getting adult braces. Like, this idea that you're so vain that you would, like, do something so goofy, and then there she was. Of course, Invisalign was an option, but she's like, I'm not responsible. I had to get him taped onto me. I was like, totally.
Feels very Natalie's 2 leggings.
She does the real, like, BuzzFeedy type of writing where she's giving us a whole history of every dentist she ever knew and all these weird things that happen with her dentists. And of course, in talking about the hell that is adult braces, her friends are all like, hey, if ever there's a time to do it, it's now during COVID, because at least you're not seeing that many people. Now, I'm embarrassed to get adult braces is America's #1 next top champagne problem, to be sure. The actually bad version of this story would be me not being able to afford adult braces and all my teeth cracking and half and falling out. I'm indescribably fortunate to have been able to save my teeth, and I have to acknowledge that many people literally cannot do the thing necessary to break out of harmful cycles because they have to work and they have to take care of kids and they are so tired, not to mention structurally held back by our quote-unquote free country.
Enough.
Unfortunately, I don't exactly have an answer to the evils of capitalism. I'm sorry again, as usual. Boy, do I wish that had been enough. There's one of these in, like, every chapter. And it really does, I think, break the illusion that we're having any true, honest conversation, because everything is being filtered and trimmed and like wrapped up in a bow by this like perfect Twitter woke language of, and I acknowledge my privilege. And I am like, at some point, Lindy, we have to move on. You have to just fucking tell me your story. The last quote I want to read from one of these first chapters is
the last quote from one of the first chapters.
Dig in, baby, CNBC. It starts now. 2 hours. Let's go. Let's ride. We have so much to get into, including an email. Okay, but my point is,
as per my last email,
I love that she's like, I've got two really good metaphors here. One is the bomb alarm clock, and the other is adult braces. Why is adult braces a good metaphor? I'll tell you. For many years, I thought my life was fixed in place, painful but immovable. I felt as though I had turned to stone, still and helpless, both physically and emotionally, slowly cracking while the world glided on without me. I took pride in my ability to weather any amount of discomfort to preserve the familiar and avoid humiliation. But I'm not stone. I deserve more than endurance. I deserve pleasure and the good and the new.
It's so interesting because that's
what I said.
A really
interesting.
really beautiful way to cue up leaving your husband for something that's nice to you.
Isn't that interesting? I used to be somebody who would weather any amount of discomfort to preserve the familiar, kind of like letting your husband have a new girlfriend so you don't have to break up. Interesting. So then we get into the midwife crisis, which is basically this idea that she has to come clean. A lot of the ideal life she has with Aham was a bit picked and whittled.
The details we knew were details very specifically shared. I think it is so interesting. Does she talk about losing her dad in this one?
Not really, but she mentions that they like really got together right after. I mean, I guess it's like the last good thing he ever did for her. So she always has to bring up the fact that he made them Eggs Benedict, like the morning her dad died or something. My experiences with men never taught me love. They taught me manipulation and how to survive on the bare minimum.
Oh,
this is why it's so weird, because it's like quotes and quotes and pages of being like, all my life, all I ever knew was letting men get away with however they wanted to treat me. I don't think I'm worthy of love necessarily. But this is different. This is something I don't want, that I learned to enjoy through sheer grit.
That's what love is. Letting it happen.
And again, here she goes, at the time, being cool about polyamory felt like a growing imperative in progressive circles. It made me defensive, particularly coming from thin people. Are you saying there's something different about me? Some reason why I specifically should be obliged to seek alternate lifestyles? Why should I? Why not you? She feels that monogamous, heterosexual true love had always been withheld, so that's what she chased. I wasn't naive. I was furious. I had to avenge. I craved that precious thing I'd been denied for so long, while all my friends and enemies dated and married and had babies and divorced. She says this later, that she's like, I know how to be very selectively honest and authentic, and I will like wield my authenticity like a knife and a sword and be precise with it in a way to protect myself. And I do think the personal is political is this way that she kind of removes the vulnerability of it.
She almost removes the personal by making it political.
There's something like, well, of course I wanted to have a husband. Society. I guess we could fight till the bros come home, and I'm sure there's some fucking tech bro in a bar in San Francisco who hasn't gotten his dick sucked in 3 years who will sit here and tell you how it's not natural to be monogamous. I look at Taylor, Frankie, Paul, and I go, there is something in us that wants a partner.
Yeah, I guess another thing that I think is unfairly projected upon her, but is all the same because she's giving us all this information, is the way that I think that there are a lot of people, me included, so I understand where people are coming from, that as single women have kind of been approached with this, like, especially single women in progressive spaces, this way that like men feel they deserve polyamory. Like, I've been approached for threesomes and like in poly situations in ways that makes me feel deeply uncomfortable. I'm a monogamous person. I've got my issues with polyamory, which like I think if other people want to do it, that's completely fine. But I feel the way that people who do it feel entitled to like try to get you.
Can I say there's an interesting like double-edged sword with polyamory. On the one side, there's this idea that like, why should you deny yourself any sexual feat or venture? There's this idea like, well, how like conservative are you that you don't think that you can have a strong, loving relationship, but then also not be able to have every single sexual desire that you crave before you die? But then there's this other side of it that's very interesting to me of like, there's this moral idea that it's so good for your soul because it forces you to look at the toughest, darkest parts of yourself and like stand on your own 2 feet. And it's like, this trial by fire of finding your own individuality and not needing anything from anyone and like looking at your insecurities and what you want from other people and like just releasing them completely through sheer force. And that to me is very like ED culture. You know what I mean? There's it's like such a binge eating of sexuality of like, you should be able to indulge with whatever you want to also never feel safe in your life through like strength.
Yeah.
Through strength of mind.
You know how people make those videos when they're in political situations where they go, I am safe, I am happy if something happens to me. If you catch me in a polyamorous relationship, someone has a gun to my head. That's what I'll say. But I want to say that I've been in these situations where like, it's not that I personally don't want to be in a polyamorous relationship. And I do think if you want to, that's fine. That's your thing. Go for it. I feel the way that it's been presented to me a number of times against my will is like really disturbing. Like the amount of people that have tried to convince me that I'm wrong about what I don't want, it's crazy. And I think that there are a lot of women who've been in that situation. So to have a woman being like, no, the people, like, first of all,
give it 2 years and a 7,000-mile drive. You'll come around to it.
Like, and I do think that having someone who presents herself as like a frontline soldier for these like
for standing up for yourself.
Standing up for yourself said like, no, if you think that this is what you don't want, you're wrong. Like you're wrong about the type of relationship you want. Let the men convince you. Like that is a hard thing, I think, for people to hear.
Yeah. He believed that monogamy was, at its root, a system of ownership. I had to admit that perhaps I didn't feel it as keenly as a white person. Aham loved me more than anyone else had ever met in his life. I was the most special person in the world and the first best friend he'd ever had. But this was not negotiable. He would not lie to me or anyone else about it, and he was prepared to break his own heart now rather than watch us decay and collapse later. Again, this idea that like everything has to be a political statement, even, I don't know, like your bedroom feels like not a way you can live reasonably. It's interesting. I wonder if he ever takes into consideration the political dynamic of her being like a fat woman.
Right. No, he doesn't, because I don't think he ever takes her into consideration at all. Like everything is an ultimatum, it seems. He said, I will either not be in a relationship or I will be in a non-monogamous relationship. I will, like, he is setting his standards for a relationship and saying accept it or walk away. I don't think her standards for a relationship have ever really been a part of the conversation. But I also think that like if that's what he wants, ultimately like we are getting to a point where he's been pretty clear about it and she could have walked away. You know what I mean?
No, 100%. I mean, she has an agency. That's the part we need to get out of the way. And then it goes on for what actually happened after this conversation. They get married. It went on for years. She kind of never let the conversation come up. He doesn't like to talk about things that are difficult. She doesn't like to talk about polyamory at all. They just never discussed it. And then, of course, the horrible thing happened. She got a DM from a fan, which I think is quite important, saying, I saw Aham kissing a woman at the bar. That woman, of course, we would later find out to be Roya. It's interesting to me for two reasons. One of my beliefs about Lindy West is she's completely lost her identity to the headlines that go viral. I think she completely sees herself in how others see her based on blog comments. And it's interesting because there was actually another girlfriend that apparently was a much bigger deal in terms of breaking their agreement because it was like a mutual friend and it was like some cute young girl in town.
And she had specifically, when they had initially addressed non-monogamy,
she has a never anyone I know.
Yes.
So this, I mean, she doesn't get into the details, but she says this was such a bad betrayal that I had every right to leave. I guess for two reasons. One, that story doesn't fit into her narrative as well and also doesn't like beget her self-change. But also, I wonder if the truth is it's more embarrassing to her to have been caught by a fan.
Yeah.
Because they're fans of her love story. Something we have not talked about yet, I think, in terms of the betrayal people felt by her is this idea that it's really hard to write a second memoir when the crux is that your last memoir was low-key a lie.
Yeah.
And I think that like, it's very Elizabeth Gilbert of how many times can you upend your entire life and live in a completely different way and be like, actually, this is the right way to live.
Exactly.
Trust me now. I mean, it's very influencer being like, I used to have worms. You have to do a detox and be like, oh, no. That was the unhealthiest time of my life.
You actually have to do the caveman diet.
Actually, that was the unhealthiest time of my life. Now I'm a Pilates princess. Finally, I found it, what works for me. And you are like, we already found what works for you 6 times over. How are all those times actually the worst time of your life? At some point, you have to say, maybe this person doesn't fucking know anymore. Maybe they never knew at all. So we go through this period of when this happened, she had just been going through what we know from Ashley was a really hard time in her life. She was working on Shrill, where she felt very alone and alienated. A lot of this has to do with the fact that she had always wanted to be a comedian. She never really let herself be a comedian. She says something like there was only one woman allowed in the comedy scene in LA, so it couldn't be me. Stuff like this always pisses me off because it really undermines the women who did make it. I'm not saying it wasn't harder for women, and it was obviously harder for women then than it is now. But when you write it off like, well, I couldn't make it because nobody could make it. Well, someone did. Someone worked harder than you. You were too scared to try. And at some point, you have to own that about yourself.
I mean, even in this section where she's talking about comedy, she says, like, at this point, like, she's talking about a previous time in her life. She goes, at that point, I was too scared to try. And I was still young then. I still could have tried. And I wish I had. I wanted to shake her again and go, try now.
Like, if she started stand-up, there'd be no questions asked. Start now. Madonna did stand-up.
Padma Lakshmi.
She just got into I mean, I just feel, don't sit here and say, well, it couldn't be me because I wasn't allowed. It couldn't be you because you're too scared to try. And instead you found this side road.
You're still too scared to try.
Instead, you found a boyfriend who did comedy. And that is a real thing that happens. And a lot of times you find those women doing comedy later and their boyfriends had given up. But I guess you married that guy instead. And maybe his girlfriend will start comedy. I don't know. Anyway, so I think that's part of what was so hard about the shrill for her. And she does say, she's like, oh, I thought finally here's my chance to prove that I'm like a funny comedy writer. And then I think she had very little sense of self left. And it was like blow after blow after blow. And maybe in a stronger way, she could have handled it. But this was not a good time for her. Anyway, she was in New York for 3 months by herself. And this book is about her deciding to go on this month-long road trip by herself. And it's pitched as this idea of like, I need to find myself. I'm never alone. Aham is so happy for me. I like thought he would need me. I thought things would fall apart without me. But he actually like really pushed me to go and he wanted me to go. And he thinks it's really important for me to learn to be by myself. And I'm like, this book started with you being by yourself. Like, it feels very Taylor Swift. We hadn't seen each other for a month when you said you needed space. What? Yeah. And I there is this idea. It's so interesting to look at a woman and go, we're too codependent off of your 3rd season of living by yourself, working on your own TV show for 3 years.
Yeah.
That's too codependent? You don't miss her yet? And it sounds like he's traveling constantly and doing work and going to artist residencies. They are, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like this whole book is she's like, I never thought about being by myself before. And I'm like, okay, but he traveled. Like, I don't know.
It seems you guys are by yourself a lot. It's just that you occupy all of that time and space with wondering what he's doing, how much he's missing you, if he needs you. Like, it seems that she hadn't taken a second for herself to say, what do I like? And that's what the taking time for herself is. Like, they've had the physical space, but she's never taken a second of mental space.
So when she does find out about Roya, he's like, by the way, you've already met her. She was at my show last week helping me set up. Can I tell you, that's where I would have walked the fuck out of the door.
Of course.
That to me is beyond.
Of course.
That is the betrayal. Like, there's always certain things where I'm like, what could I not get behind? And I think one of them is public humiliation. This idea, like, if Mac were ever to have an affair at work and like all of his coworkers knew, that I couldn't. I would be so humiliated.
I mean, they were like boyfriend and girlfriend by the time she found out about them. That, I think, is a bridge too far. To have like flings, I don't know. I feel like I can get over like sexual infidelity. I feel like emotional infidelity in this way, like to have a full other girlfriend that you have a full life with, because it really comes to a head when Roya loses her best friend and Aham says like, you know, this is my girlfriend. I am her partner. I need to be there for her in times of need. And of course, going back to her losing her father, she goes, oh yeah, he is really good at immediate post-death care. So she lets him, she doesn't let him. She just agrees that he's going to go because he's going. I feel to have a partner who has another partner in that way that you really didn't know about until, like, it's such a betrayal. It's so preposterous that she is painting this as something that she in any way agreed to. Like, this is so non-consensual. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Like, she's agreeing to not break up. She's not agreeing to the terms of his relationship, which, like, of course means she's agreeing to the terms. But, like, it's so sad to read her thinking that she's, like, a voting party.
So I feel we've gotten a lot of the polyamory out of the way. And I think that was, like, the top line of the book. That's what drew people in. That's kind of one of the central conceits of the book that I think works into her last book. But, you know what I mean? That's what feels like the lie that feels like a betrayal to everybody. I think there's much more interesting things in the book, and I think they all can be explained as this idea of what happens when you lose your sense of self to the comment section.
Mm-hmm.
And she talks about, you know, I'm afraid to heal. What if healing changes my body? How will you ever trust me again?
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because I think that her readers probably have become adults and understood that things are complicated. I don't think anybody doesn't understand that things are complicated.
It's hard because I think on an individual level, everyone understands that things are complicated, but she is right that in the internet sphere, there is a tendency to flatten. And so if you're not viewing yourself as a person and commenters as individuals, you are viewing yourself as a product and the internet as the internet's response.
Okay, then let me clarify. I think the miscalculation she made is that right now we are in an era where that kind of blanket body positivity is not working. It's been chipped away at. We've all lived through influencers, as she mentions, being paid to go on Ozempic, losing weight, and being like, actually, now I'm body neutral. We've lived through Lizzo. What I think people want now is a bit more honesty of the understanding of nuance. And instead of finding that nuance, she's asking for grace. And so I feel like once we get past the Aham stuff and like the polyamory, it gets into like what the book is interesting about. For example, she does talk a lot about reckoning with her existence as a body positive role model. She talks about, I'm also afraid to heal. What if healing changes my body? How will you ever trust me again? And I mean, she has what I think might be like kind of problematic ideas. At one point, she is offered Wegovy. She wants to talk to a nutritionist because she does come to the realization that when she is more depressed and not doing well, she does weigh more. And then other times when she's feeling better and she's active and she's living a happier life, she does weigh less. And it's like, obviously she's never size 0, but her weight sometimes can be a symptom of a depression or darker things. And she is like, I'm getting to a point where when I weigh too much, it does physically hold me back from being able to live a life that I want. Like I don't let myself go on hikes because I'm scared, or I physically can't. There's a lot of hikes. She loves to hike. She loves to swim in the beach. Sometimes she can't access the beach. And she's like, I have to figure out how to reckon with the fact that wanting to live a life that's like unencumbered, that means I might have to lose weight, but like, how do I do that without going on a diet and depriving? Like, you know what I mean? She's like, it is more complicated than I'm happy with my body. It's just society that's not the problem, that things change and our relationships with our bodies are all tricky. Our relationships with food, exercise, especially if you're suffering from depression. So I feel like that's interesting. But of course, she feels so held up by what people will think. And I really see that she's like constantly like, am I allowed to heal? Or will people be mad at me? But then she's so like responsive to the comments. She doesn't really feel sexy. She's very alienated from her own body. When she talks about sex later, it's a lot about like, when I admit it, like I didn't think sex was something for me. So I just became anti-sex.
I felt this in her other book too. And I think it had a lot to do with the infantilization, where I think because she doesn't think that she could fit into society's definition of a sex symbol or like a sexual being, I think that's part of where the infantilization comes in, where because she thinks that she can't be this like adult sexy woman, she just concedes to being like kiddish in certain ways. And, you know, in the first part of her relationship with Aham, when she talks about how she was a kid then, she didn't understand anything. She like has this real distance from like who she is in her relationships that she views as like someone who's young. In her book, she says she didn't want to be someone who grew up fast. She didn't think adulthood sounded appealing. She thinks periods are disgusting. She thinks like being a grown-up is gross, and like why wouldn't you want to just be a kid?
Well, it's funny because she's weirdly immature. So like one of the things that happens when she gets to Key West is she can't remember if she had paid for the hotel. It turns out she didn't, and she doesn't have enough money. So Aham's sister has to loan her money. And I'm like, you don't have a credit card? You're 39 years old with 3 seasons of a TV
show. And like between
show.
You and Aham, no one has $2 to roll together.
But then she tells stories about how like she's had her passport seized because she didn't pay taxes. She has had her car repossessed because she thought it was on auto pay and it just wasn't. She talks later about how much she loves having Roya in her life because Roya just pays bills on time and is very organized. And it is funny that I'm like, oh, you like having a wife because you're like the creative genius that doesn't have to take care of yourself. It is weirdly immature, especially because she's then taking care of Aham. She has this idea that if she leaves, Aham will fall apart. And I'm like, well, who the fuck is holding anything together? And I guess it makes sense that ultimately
Roya.
But I am like, they live in her dad's house now.
Yeah.
There's 3 full-grown adults. I guess not a one of them can figure out rent. Yeah. That's crazy.
It does seem to me that, and I know we'll get into this later in the backlash to a review of this book, Lindy was very upset that it was implied that Aham and Roya are like using her for money in any way. But it doesn't seem that Aham has ever contributed financially. Like, it's not clear that that's ever happened. And I do have a suspicion that because they knew each other for years before they ever got together, and they got together as she was moving to LA because her career was taking off, I do feel that what changed in their relationship was her being successful.
Yes.
And he was very attracted to that.
So beyond, obviously, the polyamory, and then I think her reckoning with her status as like a human being who lives in a body, but then that body is being watched and like can't, I don't know, like obviously we're changing all the time. You can never step in the same river twice, but like she can't meaningfully change or it'll betray people. Like I do think she reckons in some way with that. But then there's a lot of shortcomings. There's a time when she does want to lose weight, but with a nutritionist by like working on eating healthier and being more active and not from a deprivation diet standpoint. And they suggest Wegovy to her. And I guess this was written at a time when it was not as normalized as it is now, which I understand. It got normalized very quickly. But it's so funny because she thinks about it and then she goes, I can't really afford it. It's $1,000 a month. She then meets up with a nutritionist psychologist or like a therapist who specializes in food, who then diagnoses her with binge eating disorder. And she goes, isn't that crazy? I have an eating disorder. And just last week, they wanted to put me on a calorie restricting medication. Can you imagine putting me, someone with an eating disorder, on a calorie restricting medication? That would have been crazy. That's why you can't ever listen to these people. And it was so like weirdly uneducated to me to think that all people with an eating disorder are inherently underweight. Like clearly she knows that's not her truth. And also Wegovy is very helpful for people with a binge eating disorder. Like an eating disorder is a mental affliction just like anything else. And that she has this idea that those people don't get to have medical intervention is
I guess I thought that's like what it was for.
Yeah, it like gets rid of the food noise and it's been very successful for people. And it's funny because she's really anti-Wegovy. She's very like, well, they haven't done all the trials yet. They don't know what could happen long term. Like she really is kind of invested in this idea that it'll kill you. Like and she goes, right after I said no, people's stomachs were falling out. So I'm like, or whatever, like something was happening. And I think it might have been once or twice. Everything has side effects.
Oh, the gastroparesis thing.
Yeah, and she goes, so thank God I didn't do it. And I am like, God, it's so funny because you sound a lot like conservatives on the other side who want people to lose weight, but in a hard way. It can't be like you can't be cheating. And I get that she herself feels betrayed by a lot of body positivity influencers who for years were like, I love my body, and then were paid to lose weight and are like, actually, never mind. Mm-hmm. So I get it, but it is interesting that, okay, I'm really working towards my final thesis that she does have comment section brain. And I think that that's one of the examples of she expects for herself consistent nuance, understanding, grace extended not just to her, but to the people who have hurt her. That's a lot to ask of a reader. To everyone else, she gives nothing. It's very interesting to me that she is like, you have to understand that I love my body and I hurt my body and I want to lose weight, but without losing weight, and I can't let anyone down, but you're holding me back and I'm here for you. Anyone who used Wegovy is cheating and they might die. So that's stupid. Like it's a real quick binary. And this is the first of many. So in between each chapter about herself, she kind of has a vignette about where the place she is. And the first one that kind of set me off was she's driving and she thinks it's beautiful, but then she sees a weird metal building reminding you that you have no place here and you don't even know what it's for and what they do here. Like, oh, you thought you were just someplace pretty? This is a working place. And we know things like irrigation and we do things in metal buildings that you will never understand. Stop enjoying it. Stop acting like you own the place. You never do anything in a metal building. Please show some respect.
God forbid a place that she doesn't live exist for any reason other than for her to look at.
No, it's the opposite. She's saying you're not allowed to look at it because that's colonization.
Oh.
She's saying, I'll be driving down the street and it's so beautiful, but then I see something I don't understand and it reminds me that, quote, stop enjoying it. Stop acting like you own this place. You never do anything in a metal building. Which to me is such like brain rot, comment section wokeness of this idea that you're not allowed to think anything's pretty because you haven't fully like
worked on the land.
Like literally. Unless you have harvested grain from this earth, you can't look at a place you're not from and go, well, that's nice. Like, doesn't that feel... I've never once thought, oh, well, that's pretty, and then gone, fuck, Claire, stop it. Like, you think you own everything. And maybe that's the problem. Maybe it's because I am white. But I don't know. I think a lot of people have looked at many a desktop and gone, that looks pretty. I don't know.
Sometimes I take a picture.
Okay, you need to put that picture back. The land has a soul and you've stolen it.
Sometimes I see a beautiful space and I take a picture.
But I am like, she says these things and it started out with, I'm like, oh, is she kind of poking fun at herself? But I don't think she is. Then she gets into how much these people hated me. And she goes, no one will ever understand the breadth or intensity of it, how much these strangers hated me and what that felt like. There was no individual language for it and there was no cultural language for it. And she goes, something interesting is she says, I have taken screenshots of every troll comment. And she goes, every time I work with a comedian or somebody, I have to wonder, are you somebody who's like shit on me? Because she was being yelled at by like famous people.
Yeah.
Who then she ultimately might have worked with. And she's like, there's this thing where, especially I think in that TV writer's room, She's like, the paranoia of being hated means that you're in rooms with people who have probably not only hated you in private, but might have gone on Twitter and like rallied the troops against you. And there's no real way to know. Like, you can't keep track of every comment of every Reddit thread. So you just have to walk through life feeling hated. And I, clearly that is something that stayed with her and has made her like an agoraphobe.
Yeah, it's so hard because that is true. And she has had a couple of like significant explosions of like really vicious online hatred separate from like the regular influx of online hatred. The problem is if you can continue to be a public figure as someone who's getting waves of online hatred, you kind of just have to say like, I am a person who exists and I have to just move forward through it. Obviously, you can let it affect you and obviously you can let it change the way you talk about certain things. I think to get steeped in every comment, to be taking a screenshot of every comment, to be like living in every single moment of it.
Because I wonder if it was hard that so much of her online persona seems to be the person who bravely didn't care. And that wasn't the truth.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is she has been living inauthentically, not just in her body, but like she has this online persona that seems to loom even larger than her weight.
Mm-hmm.
But she doesn't realize how much it's taken over her. And this is so, I think I started to talk about this earlier and then I kind of got distracted. But she talks about how Aham is always like, I'm a person too. Roy is a person too. Like I couldn't say right back about myself. I didn't really suck up all the personhood in the room, did I? That's an annoying habit of his, this thing. I'm a person too. But I do think there's something about Lindy's. I don't think Lindy sees people anymore. I think she sees these like kind of progressive like identity tropes.
Mm-hmm.
And like everybody has theirs that they get to wield at each other. And then there's like the anonymous mass idea of the internet that's coming at you because you're too problematic or you're too woke or do you know what I mean? Like I actually don't know that she can conceptualize of people anymore. Just two people in a room who are supposed to be romantically each other's person having an honest conversation about what they need. Instead, everybody's like, well, what's your trauma? What's your oppression? Even that thought of how dare you enjoy something? Do you think you own it? Like that kind of idea of everything is so problematic. Everything's the way that when you're online,
even in saying like in getting braces, how lucky.
Yes, but she has bean soup brain where she views everything through the lens of
what someone might say that she said wrong.
Like what's the most insane comment? And sometimes she is the most insane comment. But like you know how they say like the way you speak will control your thoughts. Like your language controls your thoughts. And I think training yourself to speak in this comment section language has really turned everything into like it's never just a person in the room. It's like the most problematic political high level hypothetical blog argument.
And it's what each thing represents because the way that Aham is able to convince her that this non-monogamy that she does not want to be a part of is the right thing to do. Like he has to say, you know what I mean? Like the whole argument about it is how unwoke it is for her to expect love.
I think at some point it has to just be two people. She has this whole section about seeing like the dinosaur creationism museum, not getting to go because it's closed, but being like, this is their confirmation bias. Like, how do you find old dinosaur bones and put them into the understanding that the world's only 6,000 years old? Like, I guess we all have our myths, and I'm just like, who are you fucking talking to? Do you know what I mean? She's really like kind of making fun of them for being like, I'm like, I don't know. There's something where this whole book oscillates between her being like, you have to completely understand my fucked up situation through the lens of like colonial oppression. But anytime I see somebody with a hat I don't like, I assume the worst.
Yeah.
And it just, I don't know. There's a point where she is at a pool. She determines that everybody else at this pool is there for what she can call a KKK wedding. She calls it this because she thinks their music is racist because she had never heard that kind of music before. Of course, maybe it was. I have a heart, like, I just don't know what would make music inherently racist. And the thing that she makes fun of a 6-year-old who wants his uncle to do a backflip in the pool. And she's like, yeah, he keeps saying like, pull a backflip or something even stupider than that. And I'm like, stupid. You're talking about a 6-year-old whose big crime is what? Having family that listen to music you don't like. That's why you're so much better than them. And then there's this whole thing that she buys honey from a man who has a 2A hat on, like the Second Amendment. And she almost doesn't buy it because what if he uses that money to like go support abortion rights? And she's like, why can't he just pursue the thing he loves, like bees? Like, why? Dude, just like follow your bee passion. I'm like,
he is following his bee passion.
He's sitting here selling you fucking honey. I don't know. There's something so crazy because it's just time after. She's so mad. She's on this boat. Finally, she goes to Key West. She goes on this horrible snorkeling expedition with 72 other people. She calls them all Republicans. They're all such idiots. They're all so. I'm like, I don't know why are they any worse than you? Everyone she meets, she's like, well, they're a terrible Trump-loving idiot. That's a child I hate. Meanwhile, she talks about seeing Jersey Shore because her stepdaughter's watching it and like how much fat phobia is in it. I'm like, interesting that you don't write off completely your stepdaughter for choosing to watch fat phobic media. But when a 6-year-old has music being played, you're like, that's stupid. Like, do you know what I mean? And I think that that's what kills me is it every single part of the book, whenever she sees other, she's able to write them off completely. And at first I was wondering if there was like a self-awareness about it, but there isn't. There's like absolutely no curiosity about anybody that she doesn't think comes from her own world. Everybody's evil, but she is complex and everyone in her life who's doing things that hurt her are so complex. And that's what I think is so internet about it. She is so internet brained that she has this complicated, tricky life, but she's so full of love. And then everyone she thinks is different than her is horrible and should be written off immediately. And there's not a moment of understanding.
And I wonder how much it's amplified from this isolation that she's experienced, because obviously COVID was isolating for everyone, but she made the choice to move to her dad's cabin in Bainbridge Island, which is hard to get to. Like, she does not live in Seattle. She lives a journey from Seattle. Like, I guess then it's interesting that from this point forward, she's like continued to isolate herself even further. Like, obviously COVID was isolating, but now she's living on Bainbridge Island, which is
that
far.
where you went to a wedding?
I went to a wedding there. It's hard to get to. Like,
well, I just think like as a writer, she has 2 strikes against her. One is that she opens this book by being like, by the way, my last book, not totally true, but this time for real, with this thing that seems hard to believe. And then 2, she has absolutely no curiosity or empathy for anybody that isn't already her best friend. She says this crazy thing where she goes, I have a hard time with new friends. I feel like I can't be myself and I'm so scared they'll all hate me. And I was like, you're 40 fucking years old. And like, she still felt like a new friend, and I'm nervous around new friends. I'm always afraid I'm going to lose track of who I am and freeze up and try too hard to be cool. And the most alienating thing a person can do is try to be cool. You are too old. Like, I guess you can't really be telling anyone anything because you have a lot of sitting with yourself to do. You have no interest in other people. You have no
I guess I feel like
empathy.
She's done too much sitting with herself. She needs to like go be in the world.
It's interesting for a writer to be that uninterested. You know, for someone who's spent her entire career giving herself all the benefit of the doubt and introspection and complicated autonomy, it's hard to read page after page of her. Anytime she says anything, she has to turn to the reader and let the reader know that she has like the wokest take on it. That don't worry, she thinks being in Key West is fucked up. And meanwhile, then she goes to Tallahassee and has the time of her life. And the people she meets on the street in Tallahassee are good people because she has friends there. And I'm like, okay, yeah, everyone in Tallahassee has perfect politics and is so cool and authentic. Everyone in Key West is a Trump loser. Okay. Like, everyone but you sucks. Everyone that you like is awesome.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to read.
It is crazy to read. Should we talk about the reception to that reading?
Yeah. Just to wrap it up, on this trip, she finally has her alone time, even though it turns out she has a lot of alone time. Anyway, she has this alone time. She gets comfortable with herself. She's like returned to her body. She starts to feel sexy. Roya hits on her. Roya, and it's important to know this because she notes it a lot. Tiny, skinny, tiny little Roya. She goes, she likes me. She thinks I'm hot. Maybe I could be a lesbian for one. And so she tells Aham, we could all hang out on your birthday. Let's all go to a hotel, see what happens. And she goes, and since then, it's been nothing but threesomes and good vibes. And that's how it ends.
And not nothing but threesomes. She writes about how they don't all 3 share one bedroom. Like,
yeah, but she likes it that way. She likes to sleep alone with her phone. And
of course, how lucky.
And Roya's so good at bills, and that helps. And, you know, now when Aham hates that Lindy gets too anxious and annoying, she doesn't have to feel guilty that he's alone in his relationship because she's feeling sad. At least he has a girlfriend and blah, 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 blah. So anyway, we've gone over the book. We've gone over the context. We've gone over the internet response, which is that nearly everybody, polyamorous people alike on all platforms, are like, what the fuck?
I found this really interesting piece in The Atlantic about the horseshoe theory of Lindy West's polyamory. The fact that like her polyamory comes right back around to very traditional values. They write, West's version of polyamory seems to be not the antithesis of closed-minded traditionalism, but its strange bedfellow, both a bit pathological, both over-politicized, both a kind of engineered delusion. And I really found that poignant because I feel like the way she's talking about this feels like it's this inevitable truth from God and not like a choice we have in this life.
Yeah, I've read another interesting article about it in The Atlantic by this woman who then like something kind of turfy jumped out at me, and I looked into it, and she is someone who like has a weird relationship with trans people. So I was like, grain of salt here. But I thought she had an interesting take that was kind of like, this is the death knell of millennial feminist writing. And what she pulled out as the ultimate millennial feminist writing trope is there's this time in the book when Lindy's trying to get Adderall and her psychologist says, oh, you don't have ADD, you have something else. Like, this isn't your problem. And Lindy goes, shouldn't my words about my own life be enough? And this woman, Helen, who's writing the review, goes, of course it shouldn't, especially not in a medical situation. The whole reason we have doctors is because you cannot diagnose yourself, specifically with like a mental illness. And I understand that a lot of people aren't believed, their symptoms aren't taken seriously. But she said, like, that is the idea of the 2010s writing that we've abandoned, that we can take you at your word for your own life. And like, this is the thing that Lindy is having a hard time with, is that agreement between author and reader has been broken, that like you have to believe all women 100% of the time, even when they tell you they're happy with their husband's new girlfriend.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, just because you tell a doctor you have ADD, that's not.
Like, maybe you don't.
And it does seem that now she's on Zoloft. And it does seem like maybe she was struggling with depression. I don't know. Maybe we all have ADD. That's the funny thing, as Lindy goes, everyone thinks they have ADD because of some meme they saw. But anyway, I'm different.
Haven't.
You're lying. I'm right.
So, of course, Lindy wrote a Substack about it, about the response to this book. She writes, my life isn't subject to public audit. I already gave you what I wanted to give you.
And I had to say something funny about the interview she did and what she says in this book, even as she goes, and I was just worried people would side with me over Aham because, you know, it's already my narrative. I'm shaping the story how I want. You're already on my side. So it's funny that she's like, well, how dare you come to this conclusion? What she's really mad about is that we all came to a conclusion that she didn't want us to come to. And I was calling out that in that blog post, she writes, I have written thousands of words and deleted them all defending myself, but I shouldn't have to defend myself. I go, yeah, not because you shouldn't have to defend your personal relationship, but because you already wrote a book.
Like, you already wrote thousands of words.
Like, we're judging
from your
you,
perspective.
Yeah, we're literally judging you based on your own narrative that you gave to us unprompted, unprovoked. And we're like, this isn't resonating with me. And you're like, I shouldn't have to explain to you why I feel this way. And you're like, but you just did. And we still think it sounds wrong.
So then she goes on to say, Aham wasn't a paid or credited writer on Shrill, but he wrote tirelessly with me at home, and tons of his jokes made it to air. Aham helped me write every castle ranked, my dream, and shows up to run tech on every performance. Aham engineered the audiobook of Adult Braces and made sure that I had lemon water and 9 hours of sleep. Aham built a karaoke studio at our house in the woods so we can sing anytime, day or night, especially when one of us is really going through it. Aham and I never stop yucking it up, and that's what true love is to me. And it's like, I guess I don't think him inserting himself into all of your creative endeavors that are much more successful than his creative endeavors sounds like love to me. Like, I guess you can keep on convincing, you can keep on saying you're not defending yourself, but like the more you defend yourself, the more this sounds like the relationship you're trying to sell to people, which you are trying to sell to people, is deeply unappealing. And I think that that's one of the things that people take such issue with in her defense of polyamory is not necessarily, obviously the fact that she was coerced into it is pretty disturbing, because I think a lot of polyamorous people really wish that that wasn't the narrative out there, that people are trying to coerce other people. And I think overall, people are not as freaked out by polyamory as they are the fact that like you seem to have so little identity in your relationship. Like, and now to go on to defend Aham by saying like, look, he actually like wrote all of my work is like, okay, this is not good. Anyway, so then Sachi Cool wrote a profile on Lindy West for Slate. I think it was very fair.
It was very fair, and it was a lot about this idea of like, Sachi was like, you know, I wrote a book about my marriage, and then I had to write a book about my divorce. And so I know what it is to like write a book about your marriage that you have to kind of go back and amend. And so this is an interesting alternative of like, they didn't get the divorce. They stuck it out, and this is their reality. But as Sachi said at the end, which I thought was very astute, like the problem with living through these big moments is you're never really sure when they've resolved themselves. They don't necessarily resolve themselves on time for your book deal. So you have to kind of hope whatever your conclusion is at the end is your life's conclusion, which I think is a very reasonable, I mean, anybody not in a defensive position would say it. So the fun thing that's been revealed this last weekend on a podcast is that this very benign profile.
Yeah, this profile was pretty supportive of Lindy and her work, but it did call into question some of it. And it interviewed both Aham and Roya about their experience with Lindy's work. I mean, Roya said this I actually found really interesting. As much as a certain segment of Lindy's fan base might think they're coming from a place of care and support for her, that has been borderline possessive and even kind of abusive. It's kind of denied her a level of agency and autonomy in self-determining her existence and her relationships.
It is funny. I mean, not to quote Tyler, the creator, like I always do, but like, what do you mean you're being cyberbullied? Walk away from the computer, like, or like close your eyes or something. Like,
yeah.
But it is funny to be like, stop infantilizing her. You guys are making it so she can't make her own choices with your mean comments. Like, it is. I get it both ways. It is very infantilizing to be like, you're not happy. Do what I tell you. I've never met you. I can't trust you as an adult woman. But it's also kind of infantilizing to be like, as an adult woman, she's too affected by your comments to live the life authentically that she wants.
Yeah.
So Aham writes an email to Sachi, seeming to be specifically upset by the fact that Sachi writes at the time of the interview she did, Aham and Roya were working on a project together in Boston. I want to read what she said. West is solo in the cabin this week as she prepares for her 14-city book tour. Aham and Roya are away working in Boston on a shared project. Okay.
So Aham emailed the writer of this profile, who actually already had a personal relationship with Lindy West, and says, "This was such a shitty thing to do, Sachi. You intentionally skewed this story to fit your own bitter narrative. You wasted my time and all of our time to write an article that was going to be the same no matter what we said. You absolutely dehumanized me and intentionally diminished my personhood and career. Roya and I were on a shared project in Boston, however you worded it. I was performing 4 shows at the Paramount, and Roya is my producer. I am a person with a life and a great career and a complicated life. You boiled me down to a cheater who is on a school project making a diorama or some shit because you are mad about your life." It's important to note here that Sachi is divorced and like in her profile wrote about how she thought this was going to be another memoir of a woman coming into her own, realizing she deserves better and leaving the man.
She says, West and I have both written about our relationships at length. At the end of my book, I leave my ex-husband, but at the end of hers, she doubles down. So I know firsthand what West has signed up for with adult braces is a horror show, an exercise that sometimes feels like public humiliation.
So Roya and I were on a shared project in Boston, however you worded it. You barely wrote about the book. You just wrote a rage bait article specifically designed to direct hate towards me. You are a shitty fucking person. You are a bitter, untalented, mean girl, and you should be absolutely ashamed of yourself. You fucking suck.
Can you imagine writing that?
I mean, that's really unhinged.
I guess, like, of all the things online about him right now, that's the one that was too far.
Well, he's responded to a lot of stuff.
Okay.
He's in the comments.
Okay.
And so I do think writing to a pretty seasoned writer and journalist who wrote a very fair piece about your wife's book and offhand mentioned you because you are a key player in this book, I think this response is bonkers. And
I mean, that whole projection would be like that high school project or whatever you said. She said a project, and I guess I assumed because Roy is a creative director and you're a musician. Like, I don't know. There was no doubt in my mind it was a creative project.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, a project is higher than a show.
Cool responds, it is a shared project, and it's not a profile of Aham or Roya. It's a profile of Lindy. So I wasn't spending a lot of time investigating what they were working on together. Oh, I just remembered the last piece. Did you listen to the podcast or did you?
No, I just read it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Aham responds then and says, because they reached out about including the email in the podcast episode. And I guess they'd asked if anything was like misworded. And he said, oh yeah, the whole thing was a typo. What I meant to say is free Palestine. And this really goes to show this weaponization of identity and woke psycho bullshit. Because I'm sorry to sit here and say that like by doing any sort of like, frankly, good faith analysis of this published work, to say that like any discussion of it, to be like, actually, I'm above all this. I just want peace in the world. Like, well, I just want free Palestine.
Use specifically, like, something that's important right now and use it to weaponize a political stance of oppressed people to protect the fact that you are a man who has written an unhinged attack on a woman.
Exactly.
Is like his whole MO.
Exactly. Like he is someone who seems deeply like unhinged and unappealing. And so the fact that like Lindy is doubling down on saying like, you don't get him. He's a good, caring person. Where?
We have to move on. We've got a caps off, but I think we'll go into even a deeper dive if you can believe it.
Can we go? Yeah, we can.
I just feel like we have like another 20 minutes than us to do on the Patreon. I really, oh my God, that's crazy. I can't believe that final part.
Anyway, caps off to Amanda Petula.
You guys know I'm rooting for Amanda Petula. I'm worried about her. I do wonder that if she will reveal herself to be kind of just a boyfriend girl after her divorce. It's very easy to be the beleaguered wife of a horrible man. It's harder to be a woman on your own because now we see you for who you are and who is under there.
And who's under there? Cheeseburger culture.
Okay. If you guys were here a week or two ago, I don't know if it was on the podcast, but on TikTok, I predicted that what's next in diet culture is, and I love cheeseburgers. I love bacon. I don't even try hard. Can we just all admit that I hate working out and that Pilates sucks and that weightlifting is boring? Can we all just like admit that I don't really care? And meanwhile, they're
These
like 30
are my
pounds.
hip bones. All I want is a double bacon.
Yeah.
On a Carl's
you don't
Jr.
say these are my hip bones. You just sit there and go, sorry, I love to eat and hate to work out.
Well,
I'm lazy.
These are my hip bones was a visualization of the picture that accompanies the caption I was saying.
So Amanda Petula, who is at one point on the show, I will not speculate anything, but at one point on the show did lose her period, recently posted fueled by cheeseburgers and dirty martinis.
And those are her hip bones.
She then posts like 4 or 5 body checking pictures. There's a specific one in the back that's all rib cage. It's actually, she's like mostly covered except for rib cage, which is interesting. And I don't want to say I told you so, but goddamn do I've got my snoot in the air and I'm smelling what's coming. Watch this space. There's going to be a lot of cheeseburgers untouched on a plate poolside in Miami.
Well, good night.
And good noticings.